Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Market Open. We are live once again. We've got a bunch of stuff to talk about that has happened over the past 24 hours. We have pre-markets that are relatively red. It's not crazy red, but it is red because of some of the stuff we got going on in Iran and some updates from Israel that is affecting oil prices right now. We did get jobs data as well from the initial jobs claims and also PPI that we will talk about. Lots of other things going on, but I think the first thing that we got to talk about, which is very unfortunate, if you haven't seen the news already, I'm sure some of you guys have, is Boeing. I'll just play the video and we'll get into it, but a Boeing 787, a Dreamliner, crashed in Western India. It's very sad to see, but here's what we're looking at right now.
This morning that an Air India plane has crashed in the western city of Ahmedabad. That plane was a Boeing 787 Dreamliner. It was powered by GE engines, and Phil LeBeau joins us right now with the latest. Phil?
And Becky, at this point, the main focus for those who are at the crash scene in India, seeing if there are any survivors at all. There have been reports that there are obviously many fatalities. Whether or not anybody was able to survive this crash, we don't know at this point. In terms of the investigation into the accident, that's going to take some time. The first priority is looking for survivors. And then after that, those victims who were killed in the crash, removing those bodies. Then investigators will be able to say, okay, let's look at the aircraft. Let's get the cockpit voice recorder. Let's get the data recorder. Let's see what went wrong with this flight. Very unusual for a plane to lose power like this a minute or two after taking off. There's no indication at this point what may have caused that, but that's going to be the primary focus for the investigators. Why did it lose power? Was there something structurally that went wrong? Was there something with the engines that caused the plane to fall so quickly? Those are going to be the two primary questions there. I have reached out to veteran crash investigators and have said, look, based on what you're seeing so far, is there anything unusual here? And all of the ones that I have talked with so far have said the same thing. Nope, too early, not enough based on just what we know and what limited video is out there to even speculate as to a possible cause for this crash. But for Boeing, this is going to add new scrutiny in terms of quality and the manufacturing process for the 787 Dreamliner. There have been more than a few critics who have said, look, this is an aircraft that is not properly put together. A former Boeing engineer has said that. Boeing has refuted all of those accusations in the past. And the Dreamliner has a very safe track record. This is the first crash involving a Dreamliner in terms of the engines. These are GEnx-1B engines. Those are one of the primary engines for the Dreamliner. It also has a very strong track record. So both of those come into this incident with good track records. Now we'll find out if there was something that went wrong, either mechanically, within the software, etc. That's going to be the focus for investigators.
And Phil, that could take days, I would assume, at least, before they really have any clear indication of what happened. Yeah.
Absolutely. Look, Becky, it may take weeks or months. I mean, there have been accidents where they have a general idea, but they don't have the root cause. Investigators don't for a long time. And you'll see while India, because it was a crash in their home country, they will lead the investigation. But no doubt the NTSB and the FAA will have teams. If they're not already on their way to India, they will be shortly.
So that looks like a fairly densely populated. I mean, it looks densely populated just to
yeah.
I mean, I don't know what we're talking about here in terms of people on the ground, though.
Right. And that's why it's going to take some time. I know everybody wants the answers right away in terms of what caused this. Get the data recorder, get the cockpit voice recorder. The primary focus right now in India, are there survivors? And if there are not survivors, once that's determined, then getting the victims' bodies from the wreckage. And as you mentioned, Joe, it's a populated area, so this could take a little bit of time.
So that was the big thing this morning. This was just, it was sad, dude. It was very, very sad. the actual, video is right here. The video is not, the video doesn't literally show the plane crash. It rather just shows the plane go up in flames. So I'll just show that right here. But dude, it was just, it's one of those things. It's the first thing I saw in the morning. As you can see right there, it also looks like the landing gear does not come down the way it's supposed to come down. And then right there, that's when the plane ends up crashing. And this is obviously Boeing stock is down 7% here today in the morning. I mean, like, this is the problem is we never hear about this stuff happening with Airbus. We somehow always come back to the fact that this is a Boeing operated flight. As someone who gets on a lot of flights during the year, and every time it takes off and it's a successful takeoff, and when it comes down, it's a successful landing, I just, quietly kind of just remind myself that this is, it's a blessing to be able to get into this aircraft, go into the sky, and then come back down to reality. Sometimes we take it for granted, right? Because so many of us travel so much, and like, it's just a flight. It's become kind of normalized. We've had flights for what, 70, 80 years. I mean, we've had flights for a very long time, probably even more than that at this point. But still, this stuff happens. What you're looking at right here is a chart on the screen of multiple different crashes that the Boeing air flights have had on different types of aircrafts. And again, it's just one of those things that reminds you, this is a Boeing issue. And it's not that there aren't other airline manufacturers that haven't dealt with controversies like this or crashes before, but it somehow always comes back down to Boeing. And, I believe they were landing, it was bound for London. It was taking off for London. And then it just, like, imagine you get on your flight and you're ready to go to London, and then boom, it is really sad, dude. Really, really, really sad. And unfortunately, this is how, this played out this morning right here. And yeah, we're getting confirmation right now from officials that all 242 people are deceased. All 200. There were 242 passengers and crew, 169 from India, 53 from Britain, 7 from Portugal, and 1 from Canada. And again, 5 minutes after it took off, that's when it also crashed. So I imagine this is going to take some time for Boeing to be able to figure out in terms of how this is playing out, what's going to happen. Obviously, I'm still going to get on Boeing flights. Like, I think all of us can't really avoid it. Boeing and Airbus, especially in the United States, Boeing, it's hard to avoid Boeing flights. But it's one of those things where you just have to hope and pray that you get on a flight where it doesn't necessarily affect you. And it's very, very unfortunate to see it affecting other people right here. Boeing down about 5%. I mean, look, seeing this happen, it should have nothing to do with the stock in terms of like what people should want to happen for the stock. And the stock could go green today. That would not surprise me because it's the market. It is what it is. But it's just a sad situation in general to see how this played out today. So that was the first story we saw this morning in the context of Boeing. We did get jobs data and PPI data, which was actually, once again, pretty much showing that inflation is coming down across the board. So just like CPI, PPI beat across the board, 2.6 versus 2.6 year over year. That came in line. 0.1 versus 0.2 on the monthly, 3% versus 3.3, 1% on the core yearly, 0.1 versus 0.3 on the monthly core. It seems like inflation is coming down. Once again, it seems like inflation is finding its way to come down. So PPI showing, like CPI, that all the sort of core metrics JPAL cares about are coming down. Now, one thing that is interesting, that it's not going to be the easiest to ignore, although the market has been kind of ignoring it, and I think we're going to need a little bit more acceleration in this for the market to stop ignoring it, but jobless claims. So the market wanted 240. We came in at 248. Market thought 240,000 people would show their initial jobless claims. We had 248,000 people that ended up filing for it. So this is, I think, 3 weeks in a row that we have had a miss on jobless claims. Now it's an 8,000 miss. It's not like some $50,000 or 70,000 job miss. Remember, we need 350 to 375 a week in jobless claims to show that there is a like meaningful shift in the economy and like the path to a recession is obvious. 248 is rather insignificant compared to a 240 consensus. However, this is 3 months. 3 months in a row, 3 weeks in a row of jobless claims being higher than expected. So although the labor market has been relatively okay, non-farm payrolls were good, ADP private payrolls were good, this is one of those metrics that continues to show maybe there's a little bit more weaker job numbers than we think, but it's just not enough, I think, for the market to necessarily react in a negative way until the job numbers actually show that there are some issues. However, having said that, as soon as we got that data this morning, we did get some updated odds in regards to rate cuts. And now markets are pricing in with a 77% probability of 225 bips of cuts for the end of the year by September. So it's not 4 cuts like the market thought in the beginning of the year, but it's also not 0 cuts like Bank of America has been saying for the past couple months. Markets are now pricing in a 77% chance of 2 cuts by the end of September with the first cut, or sorry, by the end of the year with the first cut price for September. I think this is very reasonable. I think we get 2 by the end of the year. I think 1 is too small, 3 or 4 is a little bit too aggressive. And the first one in September seems kind of obvious. We're not going to get June, July. August, we have Jackson Hole. And then the next one after that, hopefully November. So this seems like the most likely scenario. The question now is, can we get earnings growth to keep up with it? Can we also not have the labor market crash while we're waiting for these jobless claims or while we're waiting for these rate cuts to come into play? And if so, maybe that would be a good thing for the broader economy. Let's look at stocks in the pre-market. Robinhood, 73.70. We'll talk about Iran in a second, and that's kind of what's creating some of this red. Tesla down about 1%. Nvidia down about 1%. Palantir down 0.38. The futures really got hit last night after some of this Iran news broke in regards to oil prices. Oil is up right now, which is part of the reason. Actually, oil is down a little bit today, but it was up 5% yesterday, so a little bit of recovery this morning. But it was up yesterday. Google right here down about 1%. Amazon down 0.5%. Meta down 0.37. We do have some updates on Meta that we'll talk about. Quite frankly, and here's a chart that I thought was really interesting that I saw yesterday. And I'm sure you guys have kind of felt this as well, just in terms of how we've been looking at the S&P 500. Things have been flat. Things have been really flat, right? Like the S&P 500 has been the most flat in the past 2 weeks that we've seen in a while. And the point of me saying this right here is I think that either we're going to stay flat or we're going to have a little bit of a pullback because we've been super green. And one could argue, hey, maybe it's time for us to have just a little bit of a either consolidation or a healthy little bit of a pullback. That doesn't mean it has to go down 5-10%, but seeing it down 2-3% is not that crazy. I mean, take a look at the put and call ratio on the S&P 500. It's the lowest it's been in 3 years. I mean, 6,000 is a big level psychologically as well, but even if it's flat, traders can still operate within it. But we've been in a range between 580 and 6,000, realistically 590 and 6,000 for the past 2 weeks. And Moody's didn't bring it down. The 20-year bond auction didn't down. By the way, we had a great 10-year bond auction yesterday. We had a very, very successful 10-year bond auction. So that was really good for the credit markets. This is a chart right here. So S&P 500, the index has gone 10 out of the past 11 sessions through Wednesday without a 0.6% swing. Do you remember in April, it was 1 or 2%, honestly, 3 to 4% up or down every other day. And now for the past 11 sessions, it's been barely moving up 0.5%. Which is actually really good. It's actually really good. This theoretically could be the definition of consolidation, but I also think that means that none of us can be surprised if we get a little bit of a downswing, even for just algorithmic reasons, like nothing fundamental, because we've just been so green for so long. And I'd rather be flat than go red because at least we're holding on to the green and giving companies some time to catch up with this as they get into their earnings, which we will talk about Oracle earnings because Oracle put up some really good numbers, and we'll talk about that in a second. But overall, the S&P 500 relatively flat, and we might see that continue on today as we get into it as well. Fear and greed, where are we at? Are we at greed? We are in greed, 62. We were at neutral, I think, last week. So we are at greed right here. Extreme greed is when, if you're a long-term investor, you can take your profits or not take your profits. But this is the time when most people, at least you don't necessarily deploy tons of capital, which again, we looked at that retail data from May, and retail's slowing down in terms of the pace of deploying their capital because they've already deployed capital many times in March and April. And so it makes sense for retail to chill out a little bit. But if we do get to extreme greed, taking some profits off the table or just not being as aggressive to put out content or not content, talking about me, put out money into the market is not the worst idea. Did you see the Air India crash? Yes, we talked about it. Unfortunately, very sad that it happened this morning. But we did indeed see that happened earlier in the day. That was the first thing I saw when I woke up, and I was just like, man, that was sad. It's very, very, very sad to see it. All right, cool. So let's get into Let's get into Oracle and some of this AI stuff. Can we talk about the dollar? Well, we talked about the dollar yesterday. Look, the thing about the dollar is all the hedge funds, or at least all the money managers, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, all the investment banking research firms are shorting it. I mean, if you read the reports, they've come out over the past 3 days. They've all said short. We're short the dollar. The contrarian play here is to not short the dollar and actually go long. Granted, I don't know what the tailwind is to go long the dollar. I mean, there's a lot of different headwinds for the dollar that I would imagine makes it a bit more difficult to easily say that the dollar will recover, especially if we're not going to be cutting rates anytime soon. So I don't think you have to short the dollar because it's already down so much from that 115 high, but I definitely don't think the dollar needs to go back up. This is good for Grab and Nubank and Mercado Libre because it makes foreign exchange rates come down, which is really good for companies that are reporting in their local currencies. However, I don't know if that means you short the dollar or you take a bet that it will go long. I think the dollar, like the S&P, kind of stays flat. I don't think the dollar is going down to 90, but I don't think it's going back up to 105. So I don't think the S&P is going to 6,200. I don't think the S&P is going back to 5,700. So I think in this range, it would be relatively flat, and that's okay. Okay, before we go on to Oracle, let's actually talk about what's going on in Iran and kind of get some updates from that. So the reason oil prices spiked yesterday is because Iran has informed the U.S. that they are more than ready to build out their nuclear facilities and launch an attack if they want to. So the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, Board of Governors announced that Iran is non-compliant with its safeguard obligations underneath the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. They found, this came out over the past 24 hours, that the regime is systematically running a secret clandestine nuclear weapons program. I don't think anyone's shocked about that. 2, accumulating highly enriched uranium, only needed for nuclear weapons. Again, I don't think anyone's shocked about that. And obstructing IAEA's verification and monitoring efforts. And it's the first time that they've reached such a position in over 20 years based on the non-compliance protocols that Iran is now violated as of the last 24 hours. And Iran, by the way, they're not really sugarcoating it. They pretty much said, the Wall Street Journal reported yesterday that they're ready to go. Like, they don't really care what people say. Now, Israel came out yesterday and they also said, hey, we are considering a military action against Iran. And the NBC is reporting right here, most likely without U.S. support in the coming days. Even as President Donald Trump is in advanced discussions with Tehran about a diplomatic deal to curtail its nuclear program, according to 5 people with knowledge of the situation, Israel has become more serious about a unilateral strike on Iran as negotiations between the United States and Iran appear closer to a preliminary or framework agreement that includes provisions about uranium enrichment that Israel views as unacceptable. So this is the issue here right now. You got Israel that, from what it looks like, wants the United States to not get into any diplomatic deal that doesn't achieve their agenda. The United States and Trump want to get a deal that can meaningfully take away the ability for Iran to pursue the path to a nuclear weapon or pursue uranium and their enrichment program. And maybe that means Trump takes off the sanctions. Maybe that means Trump opens up trade. I don't know what Trump is going to give up here, but obviously he wants them to not try to build a nuclear weapon. And then you got Iran that's kind of sitting back and just saying what's going to happen. Like, they're like, all right, what is the U.S. going to give up? And then is Israel going to attack? Because Iran's been waiting for the excuse to attack Israel. I mean, like, they've just been salivating over when they would have a chance to do it. And they haven't had a chance to do it because, they haven't had the legal justification that would make sense to the rest of the world to attack them. But if Israel strikes first, I mean, they will go back and attack. And if Iran already does have, which no one actually knows, like, any level of a working nuclear weapon, I mean, the threat always has been, this is why Obama went through the nuclear deal process, why Trump is working so hard on it, that Iran is one of those rogue regimes that legitimately would launch it. We think people think twice before pressing the red button. And given some of the motivations in that region, they might not think twice. So this is one of those things that is probably also causing a little bit of weakness right now in the markets. I don't think it's something that you get too scared about, because this happens like 5 times every year where all 3 of these actors come together and there's potential thoughts of an attack, yada, yada. I mean, you tend to buy the dip on any of these geopolitical headlines. This is also, this is where Trump's got to be Trump. I mean, he's got to be a president that can get both sides to calm down, mediate the situation, be able to get a deal that Israel likes and that Iran likes, even if each side doesn't like it as much as they want to like it, and try to make sure that World War III isn't started because of Israel and Iran. And hopefully Trump is able to do that. But that is one of the reasons why oil prices went down yesterday, or oil prices went up yesterday. Now they've chilled out in the morning, which is really nice. So it's down about 1.42%. But WTI crude's at 67. Folks, this thing was at 57 a month ago. And it was part of the reason we looked at CPI yesterday for why it was 0.5% or 50% of the reason for why CPI was down year over year, even though it was up a little bit month over month. If this continues in the month of June, and I know it's only June 12th, so we got a couple weeks left, but if these prices continue in that 65 to 70 range, that's not going to be the best thing for CPI. I don't think it's a deal breaker when it comes to rate cuts, but it's definitely not the best thing in terms of getting that overall inflation number to start heading down. So that's definitely something that everyone has to keep an eye on as well. All right, cool. So that is what we got going on geopolitically. Let's talk about Oracle, baby, because this company is up almost 9% in the pre-markets. And my, oh my, did they have an earnings that once again continues to prove that AI is real and AI is not going anywhere. And it looks like AI is going to be along for a very long time. And we all can't ignore it. We all can't ignore what's going on with Oracle. Now, what exactly did they say? We can go through all the numbers and stuff, and we can go through that later. They beat on the top and the bottom line, but there's one quote that they said, which is the only quote that really matters when it comes to understanding Oracle. And here's the quote. Last night on the market close, we were all reading this quote over and over again, and we were like, my goodness, these guys are not kidding around. Here's what they said. We expect our total cloud growth rate, applications plus infrastructure, will increase from 24% in fiscal year 2025 to over 40% in fiscal year 2026. Cloud infrastructure growth rate is expected to increase from 50% in fiscal year 2025 to over 70% in fiscal year 2026. And remaining performance obligations, RPO, which was growing at 50% last quarter, is likely to grow more than 100% in fiscal year 2026. I mean, it's just incredible. It's just incredible in the context of how much Oracle has been able to basically say, hey, we are growing, and we're growing at a level that none of you guys really thought we would be able to grow. That's why the stock is up 9% after being up 30% from the lows in April. And the market absolutely loved it. I mean, it was like if Oracle fell 5% at one point in the pre-markets or in the after hours, and if you snag that dip, I mean, then shout out to you as a trader, because there was no way in hell this thing was supposed to go down 5% based on those numbers. This has massive implications for enterprise suite AI adoption, cloud AI workloads, data centers, new training of models, Stargate, which is this massive data center project that Oracle, Cisco, SoftBank, and OpenAI are in talks with to be able to get across the entire world, obviously very heavily in the Middle East. I mean, this is a very, very exciting time for Oracle. And it's one of those things that makes you remember, wait a second, NVIDIA, Broadcom, AMD. I will be streaming the AMD event at 12 p.m. today, so we'll be talking about AMD as well. It makes you remember that like these players are just getting started. Like they really are just getting started in the context of this type of revenue growth. And then the most important thing about this is the hyperscalers, Google, Amazon, Apple, or at least Microsoft, the ones that have cloud computing services, they rely as well on Oracle, and they pay Oracle. And the fact that Oracle is saying, yeah, our cloud computing is going to grow from 50% to 70%, because we're going to have all this demand from the hyperscalers, because the hyperscalers have all this demand on their cloud product because of all these AI workloads that they're getting demand to be able to run on their servers, is just insanity. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. So shout out to Oracle. I mean, if you have this stock, I don't see a reason to sell. It could go up, it could go down, but this seems like it's going to be one of those 10 companies that plays a role over the next decade. And it's something that we probably can't ignore. Did Trump tweet? Did Trump tweet just now? Okay, he just tweeted. He said the China deal is great. The China deal is great. That is a Trump tweet. I mean, the reason he's tweeting this is because we don't have a China deal, folks. We do not have a China deal. Okay, so we can probably talk about the China deal right now, or at least the market doesn't think we have a China deal. So let's get into that discussion. But Oracle, incredible numbers, incredible earnings. And it looks like the street is not going to fade what we got going on Oracle. Triple V, thank you for the $100 super chat. Once again, appreciate you. Let me dude, every time he does a super chat, I'm just going to tell you guys the plays that he's making in the market and what he's doing with his portfolio. Thank you again for the super chat. Sure, I really appreciate it. So Triple V, he's a big believer in Palantir, for those that don't know. Like a very big believer in Palantir. I think part of the reason you found my channel is because of Palantir. Palantir hit all-time highs yesterday. Very exciting, 139. And we'll talk more about Palantir in a second for why I think they got to those all-time highs. However, when it was at 139, the option premiums in the call markets were very juicy because people were willing to pay a lot of money for these calls. So he sold 5,000 contracts which represents 5 million shares, at the 150 strike for June 20th. For June 20th. 150 strike for June 20th. So he is betting that Palantir will not get to 150 by June 20th, and he will achieve, as a result of that, 500,000 shares. I'm doing 500,000 shares. He will achieve $525,000 for that. So 5,000 contracts for 150, 500,000 shares he's putting up there. And those 500,000 shares will net him $525,000 because he got paid about $1.25 of premium on those shares as well. So, I mean, this is what I mean with covered calls, right? Like if you have 500,000 shares and you're saying, hey, I don't think they're going to get to, $1.25. I don't think they're going to get to 150 by June 20th, which, look, I would be a betting man that says they don't get to 150 by June 20th. There's 2 weeks. 150 would be rather aggressive. Could they get there? Yeah. But, and if they do, you kind of just roll that and say, okay, I don't think they'll stay at 150 for the next month and just collect that premium for the next month and just wait. But that's what he did. Let me know if anyone in the chat sold any covered calls or sold any shares. I know some people in the chat, like Elaine, she's thinking of selling 10,000 shares. She has 60,000 shares. So I don't think it's a crazy idea to take some profits at all. It is not a crazy idea, especially if you're sitting on a lot of shares right here. And if we're going to enter into a little bit more of a weak period for the S&P and the broader markets into the summer, which we don't have to, but we could. And so if you want to take some profits, take some profits. But if you want to force the market to make you sell, then you sell the covered call, which is not the craziest thing in the world. So like if Palantir doesn't get to 150, which again, it's already at all-time highs by next, in 2 Fridays from now, June 20th, basically 2 weeks, he'll collect $500,000 from all the call buyers that were willing to think it would get there. Christina says, I have 20 covered calls with the same strike and expiration as VVV. All right, there you go. There you go. Again, dude, like in this, when stocks get this aggressive in terms of this momentum, there's 2 sides of the market. People that are chasing it, and then people that are selling the drugs, in this case, the options to the people that are chasing. And sometimes the option chasers, they win. In 2024, they were winning like crazy. But sometimes they don't. And I would say a lot of times they don't, more than the sometimes that they do. And if you just happen to be the option seller versus the option gambler, you can print a lot of money, which is not the worst thing in the world. Doug also says right here, I sold some covered calls at 150 in 2 weeks. Dougie, thank you for the gifted 5 memberships. Appreciate you. And Nick B Investing. Nick, I think you gave 5 memberships yesterday. So thank you again for the gifted 5 memberships. 10 of you guys just got some memberships from Dougie and Nick B. So thank you guys for that. Daryl says, Amit, can you tell us more about Meta Planet without promoting it? Is this a pump or dump? Thank you for the $5 super chat. I haven't talked too much about Meta Planet on this channel. Look, my understanding of Meta Planet is that it is Bitcoin. It is Japan's MicroStrategy. I don't have a position in it. It's been doing well, but you're paying 10x NAV to get exposure to it. So MicroStrategy trades at like 2x NAV, net asset value of their Bitcoin. Metaplanet is like 10x. I think it's 8x. It's a pretty aggressive number. Now, the Metaplanet bulls will tell you that Japan is going a fundamental paradigm shift because their debt, as we can see with their bond yields that's been rising over the past couple of years, is like becoming worthless. When you have a 250% debt to GDP ratio, like just no one trusts that you're going to pay back your debt, and people are using Bitcoin as a savior, and they're using these leveraged instruments, Bitcoin treasuries inside of Japan, to be able to get access away from toxic Japanese debt. I think that thesis is fine. I don't know if paying 10x NAV for the thesis makes the most sense, which is why I'm not in the play, but it's worked out for people that are in it. And so if you're in it, and you've done well, congrats. I really don't know how the trajectory of that story will play out, but it has a cult following, and the people that are in the Metaplanet community, they love it. I mean, they absolutely love it. And they truly do believe that this is the new paradigm for how we should think of Japanese sovereign debt, or like people trying to find a counter-cyclical hedge against Japanese sovereign debt. And so that's kind of the very bare bones thesis on Metaplanet. Okay, in terms of that China deal, real quick. So why did Trump tweet that the China deal is done? I think it's because he's realizing the market doesn't believe it. So yesterday he said we have a total of 55% tariffs against China. They get 10% from us. We get magnet and rare earth minerals, and Chinese students can enter our universities. The problems with here are, A, we don't have any details on what we're getting versus what they're getting, other than the rare earth mineral stuff, which is fine, but that's just one detail. Number 2, how did we get a 55%, 10% split? Obviously, the Chinese, either they're horrible negotiators to say, hey, you can tariff us 55%, we'll only tariff you 10%, or they got something from us that the president hasn't talked about yet, like NVIDIA chips. But again, they haven't given any details, and Lutnick kind of denied that. But Lutnick also for 20 minutes on CNBC didn't say anything to give us any more clarity. So that's confusing to the market. And then he's talking about Chinese students entering our universities. No one cares. We didn't get into this trade war for people to get into Harvard. So I think the market is fading this China deal detail stuff because no one knows what the hell is actually going on right here. And there's no actual clarity. Besant did say yesterday when he was testifying in front of Congress that there is going to be a lot more negotiating that we're going to need to do. And that the deal, he didn't literally say the deal is not done, but he kind of implied the deal is not done, even though Trump tweeted that the deal is done. So I think the reason he just tweeted right now, the China deal is great, is because he understands the market is probably not believing that there is a deal. The market's not crashing because of it. The market's also not, meaningfully, it seems like, pricing it in. And yeah, until we get some details, I think no one's really going to care. So that's something that we have to think about as well. Why is 55% good in the first place? Well, if they're going to pay us 55% tariffs, that's a good thing, right? Like across the board, that's more money for the United States. But like logically in a negotiation, in what world is China say, okay, you can only tariff us 10%, but or we can only tariff you 10, but you can tariff us 55. There's a 45% difference right there. And that difference has to be manifested in some type of concession that none of us, in my opinion, necessarily understand exactly what that concession is for. But yeah, that is something that we're going to have to keep an eye on as well. Okay, cool. So that's what we got right now in the context of China. Now, going back to Oracle and NVIDIA. So we talked about Oracle earnings. Here's a video right here that I want to play, and then we'll go deeper a little bit more into some of the AI stuff that we're seeing on how people are thinking of AI. So a venture capitalist, Mark Andreessen, did a pretty big interview yesterday. This guy has been at the forefront of pretty much every technological shift. He created the first browser, Netscape. Now he runs one of the biggest VC funds in the Valley. Here's what he said about how we should philosophically think of AI and why the numbers from Oracle being as good as they were kind of reflect the overall paradigm shift that we're going through right now.
On the technology breakthrough itself, I think a year ago, you could have made the argument that, like, I don't know if this is really going to work because LLMs, hallucinations, it's great that they can write Shakespearean poetry and hip hop lyrics. Can they actually do math? Mm-hmm. Can they write code?
And now it obviously is.
And now they obviously can. And this, I think for me, the turning point the moment for certainty for me was the release of O1. So O1 from OpenAI, the Reasoner, and then DeepSeek R1. And those happened kind of back to back. And the minute those popped out, you saw what's happening with that. And the scaling law that was around that. You're just like, all right, this is going to work because reasoning is going to work. And I would say every day I'm seeing product capabilities. I'm seeing new technologies I never thought I would live to see, like really profound. I actually think the analogy isn't to the cloud or to the internet. I think the analogy is to the invention of the microprocessor. I think this is a new kind of computer. And being a new kind of computer means that essentially everything that computers do can get rebuilt, I think. So we're investing against the thesis that basically all incumbents are going to get nuked. Yeah. And everything is going to get rebuilt.
Just across the board.
Just across the board. Now, we'll be wrong in a bunch of those cases because some incumbents will adapt.
But power law, the things that are right will be super right.
Will be super right. Exactly. And then look, the AI makes things possible that were not possible before.
He is one of the people that can speak faster than me, but I noticed what he said right there. He said, all the incumbents are going to get nuked is what he says. And I thought that was pretty interesting language in terms of him basically saying, hey, AI is changing everything. And that goes into this clip I want to share from Gary Vee. Some of you guys may know him. He runs a big social media advertising agency. Going back to the argument that incumbents are going to get nuked. I know Austin in the chat is not going to appreciate me playing this video, but nonetheless, here's Gary's take on Google.
To me, in my brain, as I sit here today, Google AdWords and Google search is dead. It's not fully dead because it's alive right now, but it's fucking dead. The fact that already in my search bar, in my little laptop, I no longer by default go to Google, but even more interesting, fuck me, I use things fast. The fact that I'm speaking at conferences, Dustin, where are you? Dustin, who travels the world with me in Phillips. Dustin, you've seen this play out the last year. About 15 months ago, I would go to a crowd, especially if it was 40, 50, 60-year-olds. I'd be like, stand up in this audience right now if you are now using, an chat GPT or whatever I would spit out instead of what you would use Google for. And as you know, Dust, 15 months ago, more people than the crowd thought. A lot more, like 10% would stand up and it would shock people because 15 months ago, that crowd hadn't even really heard about it all the way yet. We were just in Vegas or Orlando, I don't know where we were, but I asked the same question, the whole fucking room stood up. If Google perfectly executes Gemini, perfectly, they're still gonna lose an extraordinary amount of market share for that behavior.
Okay, so I agree. Saying the F word over and over, Gary has been doing this for years. It doesn't really help make his case in terms of the argument he's trying to say. But I also don't agree with him. I do not think Google is dead. But the broader point he's getting to is that, hey, Google's going to have to really execute perfectly in order to be able to keep the market share that they have. And even with that, they're probably going to lose some market share. That's fine. That doesn't mean Google's going to go out of business. That doesn't mean Google's not going to be able to grow. That doesn't mean there are other parts of the business that are going to be influenced by AI. We talked about YouTube yesterday, contributing $55 billion to GDP is not going to have massive levels of growth. And that also doesn't mean that their search revenue, even if they lose some of that market share, they can monetize the market share that they have and grow that maybe even at a slower pace, but in a generative AI world, which is something that the market would still care about and see as important. But nonetheless, Mark Andreessen is basically making the argument right here that the incumbents need to change aggressively. And if they don't change aggressively anytime soon, there's going to be some issues in regards to how they think of where AI is coming from. And then here's this last clip right here of him talking about Chinese AI versus American AI.
And to fully proliferate their technology, which they're doing in many areas.
Yeah.
And the world, 50 years from now is going to be running on, 20 years from now is going to be running on Chinese AI or American AI. Like those are your choices.
Do you think that's how it'll basically play out?
Yeah. It's going to run on one or the other.
How will that play out? Like, let's say it's one or the other. Like,
so AI is going to be the control layer for everything. So my view is AI is going to be how you interface with the education system, with the healthcare system, with transportation, with employment, with the government, with law, right? It's going to be AI lawyers, AI doctors, AI teachers. Okay. Do you want your AI teacher, you want your kids to be taught by Chinese AI? Really?
Yeah.
Like like they're really good at teaching you Marxism and Xi Jinping thought. Like it's like the cult. There's another way to put it is the culture's in the weights. Yeah. Right. And so like how these things are trained and like who they're trained by like really really deeply matters. And so and by the way, this is already an issue in lots of countries because they're like, number one, they may not want Chinese AI, but number two, do they want super woke Northern California AI? Right. Is another open question, right? So there are big questions on this. And so I just think like there's no question like if you had a choice between AI with American values versus the Chinese Communist Party values, I mean for me it's just crystal clear where you'd want to go. Yeah. By the way, there's also going to be direct military. There's a direct military version, of national security version of this, which is okay. Do you want to live in a world of all CCP controlled robots and drones and airplanes and cars?
I mean.
So again, the argument here that he's making, and again, this is the guy that's investing very heavily in these AI companies, is Western AI versus Chinese AI, CCP AI, CCP AI versus American AI, which we all got an example with. If anyone ever used DeepSeek, you try to ask it about Taiwan, it does not give you an answer. You try to ask it about Xi Jinping looking like certain cartoon characters, it will not give you an answer. Like it will self-censor itself in a pretty dramatic way. Now, American AI isn't perfect either, and we have different problems with it as well. But you have people like Elon trying to change that. You have it trying to search for more for the truth. And his argument is just, hey, we need to pick which type of AI we actually engage in. And that AI most likely has to be something rooted in at least something that's approximating what could be the truth versus something that's self-censoring itself to try to only find the agenda that's driven via the people that came up with the algorithm itself. This is another video we got yesterday from Neo's RL controller. This is a humanoid robot that is walking. Again, the humanoid robotic revolution continues to gain momentum. And this is, this is one, we're talking about LLMs, we're talking about data centers, we're talking about cloud computing. We're not really talking about how big this industry really could be and how much of an S-curve that can create as well. But it's happening in our lifetimes. It will be happening in our lifetimes. And so when you put this together with everything that Oracle said, and obviously all the results that we've been seeing from some of the hyperscalers, we've been talking a lot about ChatGPT and their growth. It's just looking like, again, regardless of whatever macro uncertainties we may be facing, it is not enough to take away from the overall technological shift that's going on. Not to mention a lot of this AI stuff is going to deflate the entire economy. And we talked about it yesterday in terms of all these different ways that AI is going to be deflationary, which kind of makes the inflation concern silly given what's going to happen with AI. But this is the new world that we are getting into. Here's what analysts had to say about Oracle. We got the market open in 3 minutes. Cantor Fitzgerald, 216, buy it. Wolf Research, 215, buy it. Evercore, 215, buy it. Jefferies, 220, buy it. DA Davidson, neutral, 170. Stifel, 180. Hold. Morgan Stanley, equal, 175. JP Morgan, 185, equal. Oppenheimer, we think it's going to be good. No price target. Bank of America, buy it 220. Mizuho, buy it 180. Piper Sandler, buy it 190. Barclays, buy it 200. RBC, buy it 195. So you got the entire street pretty much saying what they said about NVIDIA. They think it's going a lot higher, and they believe Oracle will be a core player in the broader data center space. So that's what we got. Okay, Chime is going public today. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's public today, right? It's not Friday. It's today. The Chime valuation to me is insanity. So we talked about this yesterday in the market close, but Chime is going public at 11 billion, 1.7 billion in revenue, 25 million in net income at a loss. SoFi, which closed above 14 or closed above 15 yesterday, 2.7 billion in revenue, 500 million net income, valued at only 16 billion. It feels like Chime is going to go public and they are going to surpass SoFi's valuation because all IPOs have been up like at least 40, 50% on the IPO day. And if they do go public from 11 billion and they get to 20 billion and SoFi stuck 1485 right here at less than 15 billion, it's going to be really sad. It's going to be really sad. I did not say China's going public, dude. I didn't. Yes, you guys just love Steve. And it's quite sad to see where your allegiances are. Like, it really, it really is quite sad to see where the allegiances are for you guys. But Steve, I was like, oh, Chime's going public. And Steve's like, you said China's going public. I'm like, no, I didn't. And then we replayed the clip. And it was so obvious that I didn't say China. I was like, what are you talking about? I didn't say China. I said Chime. And the whole chat was putting these Chinese flags. And I was just like, wow, you guys, like, there is zero loyalty. There really is no loyalty here. Or maybe there's loyalty to other YouTubers, but when Steve gets it, it's like, oh, Steve, we gotta agree with Steve. So, oh, by the way, yesterday, I'll see if I can clip this and maybe I'll post it as a clip later on Twitter or whatever. But Steve finally admitted I was right. He didn't do enough build up though. He needed to do some build. He kind of just dropped it, and I was like, oh, dude, you have to build that up. But he said I was right about Apple. He is thinking of selling his Apple, folks. Steve is officially thinking of selling his Apple for NVIDIA. He could not believe that liquid glass was the innovation at WWDC. And is, a 10-year, almost 15-year shareholder that's now thinking of getting rid of his Apple. All right, folks, 9:30, June 12th. Thank you, everybody, for being here. The stock market, once again, is open. All right, wake your ass up. Let's get into it. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Let's see how this market opens. Robinhood, 73.30. That's down about 2% on the day. Robinhood did get to 75 yesterday. I think we closed at 74.50. 73.57 right here, down about 1.79%. Tessie, 324. That's down about 0.5%. NVIDIA, 142.67. That's down about 0.110. Palantir, green. Palantir in the sea of red. We got Palantir. Dude, Palantir just does not care. If we can get back to 137, that would be incredible. Palantir right here, 136.72 on the day. PayPal right here, 74.36. SoFi below 15. Grab, 471. That's down 0.5%. Amazon, 212. That's down 0.5%. Meta, 692. Salesforce, 264. Elf, 123. That's down. Enphase is slightly up. Microsoft, 475. That's basically at all-time highs. That's up about 0.5%. Apple, 198. Apple 198. That is down for Apple, and that is red. SMCI is down 1.5. Reddit's down about 2.4. AMD, again, they have a big event today, so we'll see what happens with AMD. By the way, I believe Jose will be on in about 30 minutes, and we will get his take as well on Oracle earnings and a preview from him on AMD. So we'll get his perspective right here, but AMD is down on the day. Roblox is up a little bit. HIMS up about 0.5%, $58. CoreWeave, that's, of course, up 3%. Why not? Oracle, Oracle's got to be pumping. Oracle, 8%. There you go. 8% on Oracle. So you got Oracle going green. Yeah, Apple's down because Steve's selling. He's selling his shares. Nebius, which has been a big win for everybody, 50.80. Oh, and then ASTS, shout out to Chris and Ann Panman. These two were on the stream yesterday. I think it was a really good stream. It was an hour and a half. We got through a lot of parts of the thesis, and I've turned it into a content series. So we're going to do it 2 times a month. I'm going to find all the experts on all these new stocks like Lemonade, Oscar, all this stuff that people care about. And retail is going to, hopefully it serves as a destination for retail to just get at least a couple hours of DD for free on a stock without having to search like all these different profiles and just say, all right, this is the dedicated research I can go to just learn in depth what is this stock, and then I can go deeper if I care about the thesis. But ASTS right here, it's very interesting, folks. And I am thinking of buying in, quite frankly, not only because of the thesis, and I'll let you guys know if I buy in. I haven't bought Robinhood right here at 74. But that community, bro, that dude, people sent me PDFs of 250 pages last night around their thesis on ASTS. And I'm looking at this like, there's no way you have a 250 page thesis. It is like the community. Sometimes you don't fade that type of a community, bro. When people are dedicating, like Palantir, right? People were literally dedicating 10 hours a day of their life. I was putting up 3 videos a day back in 2022 to try to figure out what was this company. Like the level of interest that has, or that can create for people, you just don't fade that. You kind of recognize that there is a need to look deeper into a story if that many people care that deeply about a thesis. And so that alone is convincing me that there was something there. And then obviously I think the thesis last night was well explained by 2 people that were able to articulate it very well. Bitcoin right here, 106. That's down from 109 yesterday. So that one's a little bit down. Where's MicroStrategy? We have 370, MicroStrategy 375. That's down about 3% here right now. Yeah, shout out to the Space Mob. Shout out to the Space Mob. Robinhood said they will be demoing new features live on X on June 17th at noon. Okay, this is perfect. Vlad and I actually talked about this. We were at the Gold event, and he said, I know we have a lot of events every year, but I'm thinking of doing like these live streams where we just show the features live on X and on YouTube. And I think he's kind of getting inspired by OpenAI, because OpenAI started doing this a couple months ago. And it's a great idea. It is such a good idea because you literally just go live. The audience is there, and you just show off some products. So here you go. Next week on Tuesday, June 17th, we're going to be live from Robinhood's HQ on X and YouTube to announce new products and demo them for the first time. This is really cool. These are new products. So this is not anything we've already heard about. These are new. So we're getting, again, new products from Robinhood, once again, continuing to push the envelope and just show how much momentum they can really have. 74.35 right there on Robinhood. This is why I continue to buy this thing, dude. It's like when you have a team that ships that much and that is just ready to get products out into the world, it's just kind of hard to fade that. Tesla right here, 323. That one's down. NVIDIA, 143. NVIDIA goes green. Palantir trying to go back green, 135.95. SoFi back below 15. And then Googs right here at 175. That's also below 180 currently right now. It'll be noon on June 17th. Noon on June 17th. Where's Archer and Joby? Trump signed an executive order on eVTOLs yesterday. Archer, yep, passing $12. That's up. And then Joby, that's down 3%. Joby was up like 20% last week. So both of those doing okay, especially Archer right here. And then Nebius, 5101, that's cracking above 51 once again today, which is not bad. Charles, thank you for the $20 super chat. I appreciate it. Great stream yesterday evening. Looking forward to more of these. Charles, appreciate you. Thank you for the super chat. I think a lot of people enjoyed it. And I think turning it into a content series makes sense because there's so many stocks that I personally don't have the time to do a ton of due diligence on, but there's so many experts in that field. And, like Oscar, like I'm interested in it, but I would love to have 3 people that really understand it. And we take 2 hours and they just lay out the thesis and then people can go forward from that. So yeah, we're going to try to commit to it 2 times every single month and go from there. Meta right here, 689. That's red. All the semis, let's take a look at them. They are pretty much all red. ASML's up a little bit. Dell's up a little bit. NVIDIA's up a little bit. Again, Oracle is the big mover on the day. Where is, oh, wow, 9.3. Holy crap, Oracle. It's getting a bid. 9.6. There you go. 193. $16 on the day. Oracle's market cap now, it's added $47 billion in the past 24 hours. Not bad. This was just under 500 billion yesterday, and now it's at 542, up 9.6%. So that one's doing great right here. Again, NVIDIA is up a little bit. Oklo, which was up 27% yesterday, they did an equity fundraise or an equity convertible note yesterday of about $400 million. They are down 3%, but after being up 30% and after being up 600%, or sorry, 1,000% since the low sixes in September. Raising $400 million and going down only 3% is, it's just incredible, dude. This is a $10 billion company, no product, barely any earnings, but the market sees the demand for AI is so real. This is why I don't think it's 2021. A lot of people are like, oh, this feels like 2021. And my counter retort to that is, look, I know it feels like 2021 where Oklo is a $10 billion company, no product, and it's, getting all this momentum, but the growth is going to be there, right? Like we are going to need nuclear energy for AI. We know that's happening. Now, maybe the growth is not there enough to justify 10 billion, but it's not like the growth is fake. In 2021, Open Door was fake. Virgin Galactic was fake. Like none of this stuff was real. Like SoFi was one of the only SPACs that actually made. Ginkgo Bioworks was fake. All of this stuff was just pure nonsense. And so I think, unless these companies that are going public right now are absolutely full of shit, which I don't feel like they are, given they're connected to the AI thematic and there's a lot of demand that's going to be coming in their specific niche within that thematic, then I think that growth will inevitably be there. It's just the market's pulling forward that growth before. Is Grab dumping? Are we dumping? Grab is dumping. 462. That's down about 2.4%. Okay, so we went through Grab yesterday. The CFO wrote a post on LinkedIn. I'm not going to go through it right now, but if you go to the end of market close, we talked about it for 10 minutes. Let Grab dump. I mean, to me, I think it does not matter. The TLDR is that their round to raise 1.5 billion was oversubscribed, which means they had way more demand than they could even handle, which is why they had to up the offering. The street knows what they're going to do with this money. Or at least the street doesn't know, but the investors know that they're going to do something big with this money. The street doesn't know. That's why the stock is down. At this point, I kind of don't care, because I believe that you don't raise 1.5 billion when you have 6 billion in cash. The market cap now is 18 billion. They have 9 billion in cash. I think something's going to happen, but you got to be patient with it. And if you don't want to be part of the story and wait, then you don't have to be in it. But it does seem like they're raising this money from a position of strength, and it's free money. It's a 0% coupon. So it's a smart thing to do. The question is just how they're going to deploy it. And I think over the coming months, we will find out. NVIDIA right here, 143.54. Tesla 327. Tesla goes green. Robin trying to get to 75, and then Palantir just under 136 right now. Oh, where's Boeing? Boeing is down 5%. Boeing is down 5%. Would you rather Grab, buy back shares, or acquire GoTo? I would rather them acquire shares, or rather them acquire GoTo, but at the right price. I don't want them to pay like $10 billion for it. But buying back shares is like, it's like, I'm not in this for them to buy back their stock. If that's the only thing they can do, sure. But I'm pretty sure they can do a lot more than buy back their stock. By the way, Grab released their monthly metrics for May and April. And they said that GMV is up 20%. So they kind of do it like Robinhood, where you release 2 months out of the 3 months. And they released that yesterday, and everything's going well for Q2. So that's fine. But yeah, I'd rather them actually acquire a company, not their stock. But you got to be patient here. And if you don't want to stay in the story, then, you don't stay in the story. But this is what tests your patience as an investor. With Robin and Palantir, we went through it, or at least I remember going through it, like, hey, this was stuck at $7-8 for a long time. And then when it broke out, it broke out. And it only breaks out if there's a fundamental thesis. And so that's what you have to believe. And it kind of sucks when you see an Oklo go up 30% in the day, or a quantum stock go up 15%. And you're like, why am I in this fundamental company that's that's GAAP profitable, that has adjusted EBITDA going up 400% year over year, when this no-name nuclear energy stock can move up 40% in a day? It sucks. I get it. It feels like shit. It feels like, man, I suck at investing if I'm in this random stock that I believe there's a real thesis on. But Oklo's up 30%. But also, I think that's an elementary and naive way to think about it, because if that's the case, then you're going to be chasing every stock forever, right? Because you're never always going to get into the Oklo before it pops up to 66, because the only people that were in Oklo at 6 actually understood there was some level of a thesis there. And that thesis, even if it wasn't backed up by earnings, it was backed up by a story, and that story just ended up playing out. But if you get in at 65, it's like, if you leave all your picks for just trying to chase, it's, it could work, but historically we've seen that doesn't always work. But again, that doesn't mean you should feel bad if you're up a lot on Oklo. It just means that if you're not in this name and you're in another name that is underperforming, you got to evaluate, do you want to be in the name that's underperforming? And do you believe there's something that inevitably is going to pay out? Like, if you're going to get a 4 or 5x in 2 years instead of getting it in 2 months, like on Oklo, but in 2 years, you're really happy with that return, then, that's how you have to assess just how patient you want to be as you're waiting for it, if it ends up happening. Bitcoin right here, 107. That's up from 106. GameStop also. Oh my goodness, dude. How did no one talk about GameStop in the chat? Holy crap. No one cares about GameStop. 18% down. My goodness. I don't see any GameStop comments, which I'm kind of happy about. That means we don't care about GameStop anymore, which is a good thing. But they raised 1.75 billion yesterday. They're probably going to be buying Bitcoin. I think the street's just like, or people are just like, we're done with this shit, bro. Like, and when I mean we're done with this, it doesn't mean that people aren't going to buy GameStop anymore, but we're kind of done with the idea that GameStop promised a rebrand and like a total paradigm shift in terms of how they were going to think about the company for the past 5 years. And the best they could come up with was buying Bitcoin at 100 grand. So yeah, I think, and also management sucks, bro. Management doesn't talk to shareholders. They don't answer any questions on earnings calls. Like, this is one of those companies that doesn't deserve to be public, in my opinion, because they're just such bad actors with public capital. And they manipulated the public to be able to give them all these funds based on something that happened 4 years ago. But they have shareholders that continue to believe in the thesis. And, if that's the case, then they will continue to buy GameStop. I had someone that I knew on Twitter who sold 10,000 shares of Palantir. Oracle, by the way, up 11%. He had a $7 average. He sold them at $18. 10,000 shares. He literally had if I had 10,000 at a $7 average, I would just like, dude, I would print a picture of that and just put it on my wall every day and just remind myself like that I have that position. And he bought GameStop at $27. And so I think that person probably thinks about that decision multiple times a week. I don't know, dude. I don't know if I could. I mean, you got to just kind of move on with life. And, I think you got to just like not even focus on those two companies there. Cause like that's a tough one, especially seeing what now he probably would have sold Palantir before it got to 130. But, even if he sold at 40, 50, I mean, that's a lot more money than GameStop. So yeah, that's a tough one to deal with. But again, GameStop, it got people excited about it. And it just never ended up working out. Oracle right here, 195. Where's Red Cat? Is Red Cat moving today? Red Cat, that's up 10%. Okay, for those that are asking if I'm getting into the Aero IPO, the answer is yes. I asked for 250 shares at $12 a share. And I hope I get my allocation. It's AIRO. It's going to go public tomorrow. And the only reason I'm doing it is because I think there is a thematic that's being formed around drone and defense technologies. Also, little bit of gambler right now. IPOs have done very well. Let's see if this IPO does well. Chime's going to be an interesting one today. I mean, I think they're going to do well, but it's going to look really bad if they have a bigger market cap than SoFi. I mean, it's just not going to make a lot of sense. Now, granted, Chime doesn't have a banking charter. And this was the thing. This was the debate that me, Tanner, DDI, and Steve had last week. It was like, wait a second, that banking charter, although it's not a drag on revenue, it's a drag on the perception of the stock, which I agree it's stupid. Like it shouldn't be a drag on the perception of the stock. But I don't know how else to explain why SoFi would be worth less than Chime, other than Chime doesn't have a banking charter, so they're more classified as a fintech, which, again, it's a stupid argument, but that is the perception that I think could be happening on the street. So we're going to see maybe SoFi gets a comp that's higher because the market looks at Chime and they're like, okay, if we give Chime 20 billion, we got to give SoFi at least 18 billion. And maybe that somehow pushes SoFi to go up. But later today, we're going to see what happens for Chime. And yeah, the ticker symbol is AIRO. So if you search that up on Robinhood, there's IPO allocation that you can sign up for. I don't know how it works on Schwab and Fidelity, but I think you can as well on those. And then, yeah, I asked for 250 shares. I'm probably not going to get all 250. We're going to see if it's really oversubscribed. They might give me like, less than half of that. So we're going to find out over the coming days, and I'll let you guys know which ones I get. Okay, cool. What else do we have? S&P 500. Are we rebounding? Oracle, great day, dude. My goodness, Oracle. And they deserve it. There you go. Almost 11% on the day. They absolutely deserve it. S&P flat at 600. HIMS is up 5%. Robinhood trying to get to 50 or to 75. HIMS, no, sorry, it's not 5%. 58.30. That's up 2%. But HIMS is green on the day, maybe trying to crack 60 again. And then Palantir back to 136, which again is very nice. Now, again, why did Palantir pump yesterday? The main reason was because the New York Times accepted an invitation, in my opinion, this is the reason why it pumped, for a interview with the leadership team to learn more about their software and their architecture. So kind of my take here is that if the New York Times visits Palantir and they put out an unequivocal retraction of the article they put out that caused all of this narrative shift on Palantir over the past couple of weeks, then maybe the market's seeing that as a good thing. Now, maybe the New York Times is going to use this meeting and just be the New York Times and try to manipulate it and spin it, et cetera. That could also happen. But I think it's the right move for Palantir to invite them in and say, hey, we're going to be as transparent as possible. We can't control what you guys write about us. But like, if you write some slanderous stuff again after learning about the software, then it is what it is. You guys are just a bankrupt, corrupt institution that has no ethics or morals. But regardless, I think it's a good thing for Palantir to do. So maybe that could have been the reason as well that Palantir was up yesterday. Also in the options market, again, dude, Palantir, it is in the top 3 every single day. It was number 4, 1.2 million contracts. Alibaba was actually number 3, 1.2, Tesla at 2.5, and NVIDIA 2.2 million. So you had a lot of these contracts. SoFi had 420,000 contracts that were traded yesterday as well. Robinhood 324,000, Oklo 421,000, AMD 433, and then TSM at 695,000. So we had a lot of option contracts traded yesterday, and Palantir again continuing to be in that top 5 as well. Is there any news about HIMS? I don't think there is. Doesn't seem like that's the case. You can't flip Arrow within 30 days. Is that a, did they say that? I will see if that's the case. I thought the rule was you can flip it. You can flip it within the hour, but you can't qualify for other IPOs after 2 months if you do that. I'll look at what Robinhood says though. Maybe they have a different way of how it plays out. But that is important. So if you're getting into it for a quick flip and you're not allowed to flip it for 30 days, you have to know that. So I'll try to look into that and see the actual details, but that is something to know, because then you might be stuck with it. Robinhood 75. There you go. 75 on hoodie. 75 on hoodie. Yeah, if you flip it, you might not be able to get into future IPOs. Yeah, that's what I thought. I think you can flip it, but you're going to get banned from IPOs, but only for a certain amount of time. It's not for eternity. And if you get a successful IPO flip, it's not easy to do that. So like I'm okay sitting out for the next 60 days on IPOs. It's probably healthy to not speculate on all these IPOs. But it is, again, dude, we are getting into the point where like we've had like 4 IPOs in the past month. I mean, if we start to have IPOs every other week, it's very exciting for equity markets, because there's this new little toys we get to play with, basically, in terms of these new companies as stocks. But also it means, first of all, financials are going to do great, Goldman, JP Morgan, et cetera, but it also means that money's coming back into the ecosystem. And that money could create a little bit of froth, but it also could create a lot more momentum. The weird thing is that Stripe hasn't gone public yet. So you got all these other random companies going public, but the big ones, Stripe, Discord, Klarna, they haven't gone public yet. And I think that's what the street is really, really waiting for. And hopefully later in the year we get that. Robinhood 75.26, that's green. SoFi 15. SoFi's back to 15. There she goes. SoFi 15, Robinhood right here at 75.26. Nvidia 143.77, Palantir 136.48, and then Tessie 325 currently right now. Anduril IPO is probably in 2026. I doubt it. It's not happening in 2 months. I mean, I can't guarantee that, but I'm pretty sure. Well, dude, I can't guarantee it, but I'm 99%. They just raised $2.5 billion in the private markets. They don't need money. So I really don't think, we might not even see Anduril IPO in 2026, dude. Like, this is they're a defense contractor that's growing fast. They don't really need the public markets. So they could go public next year, but I don't think they have to. They definitely don't need, the money from the public markets to do it. So I doubt that's going to happen anytime soon, but Anduril will 5x. And when they go public, I don't know what the market's going to look like, but over their lifetime, they are going to be one of those stocks that gets a lot of momentum. Like the cult fall. If ASTS has a cult, by the way, Palmer Luckey is an investor in ASTS. I found that out yesterday as well. ASTS up about 2% right here. If ASTS has the level of following they have, I can't imagine what it's going to be like for Anduril. And who knows, dude? They just raised at 30 billion. They IPO at 50 billion. 5x is 250 billion. That's pretty aggressive for a defense contractor, but it feels like over the lifetime they're going to do that, and maybe it happens quicker than over 10, 15 years. And that's obviously going to do very well for the early investors in this company. Is HIMS trying to go for 60? Or are we kind of close? HIMS 59.34. Let me check resistance at 60 and see what we got going on. Nvidia, Hood are all green. Disney's at 119. Palantir just went green as well. HIMS at 60. Resistance is 3,000 shares, which is not a lot. It's not even resistance, to be honest. Anduril does need the public market. They don't have contracts from the military to build stuff. They all do their R&D and product development on their own. Nickel. Yeah, so I agree. They eventually need the public markets, but they just raised $2.5 billion. So I feel like at least for the next year, they don't need the public markets, because why would you raise $2.5 billion versus go public? They would have just gone public right now, right? If they really needed a lot more money than that. But I think they can be held off for the next minimum 6 months to a year. But then eventually they will go public. But again, also, I don't know if Palmer Luckey wants to deal with, public market things and road shows and board calls and earnings calls and all this stuff. Like, I think, when you get ready to do that, it's a whole different world, right? Regulatory scrutiny, all this stuff. He probably can't tweet the crazy stuff he tweets, even though he's probably still going to do it now that he's, the SEC is going to be looking at every post as a publicly traded company. So I feel like they might want to take a little bit more time before they officially get out there. What's happening with Rocket Lab? So Rocket Lab had a successful launch yesterday, which was really good. 27.22. It's been flat in this 27 range, which I think is really good. When it pumped to 32, that was based on SpaceX speculation. I don't think that was a real pump. Most people that are in Rocket Lab probably know that was just based on the government needing other contractors besides SpaceX. And maybe that is the case in the future, but that's not manifesting in any real revenue for Rocket Lab yet. So I think that's why it's down from 32. But dude, this thing was at 15. So holding 25 to 30, I think is not a bad thing at all for Rocket Lab. 75.28 right here on Robinhood. Palantir 136, Nvidia 143, Tesla 326. That goes green. And then Oracle again 197. Wow, 12% on the day. 12% of the day. Palmer's chairman, not CEO. Yeah, but he is still part of the company. I mean, anything that he tweets, like the SEC looks at, you know? It's like when Chime and these guys tweet like that. I mean, you know, every investor can see publicly what the CTO of the company is saying. And so even if you're the executive chairman, my point is there's just more scrutiny that I don't know he wants to deal with right now when they just raised $2 billion. But eventually, you know, they're going to have to deal with it. Now, the funny thing is if they do go public in 6 months because they used up that 2.5 billion because they're growing so fast and they need even more money, that would be really bullish if they end up, you know, going public anytime soon. But it just wouldn't make sense to me for them to go public that soon if they raised this money. He's gonna pay a $20,000 fine. Dude, what if you know, in the NBA, like if you talk bad about a ref, the NBA started doing this 5 years ago. If you talk bad about a ref, you have to pay $50,000, and it's so stupid. So all the you know, if you're an NBA player and you had a crappy game and you blame the refs, you would go on the post game show and you would just talk shit about the refs and be like, all right, I'm paying 50 grand. It'd be so funny if the SEC did something like that. And, you know, CEOs just dropped 50K for saying something stupid. Robinhood right here, 75.40. That's up almost 1%, trying to get back to 76. Nvidia, 143. S&P trying to go green. And then HIMS, there's no resistance at 60, so I could see it happening. Where's the quantum names? 59.73 on HIMS. QBTS, down 2%. Oh, dude, Skrelly had another debate with a quantum guy. And let me just tell you something. Quantess, in our community, she held her ground in the debate with Skrelly. The guy who Skrelly debated 2 days ago, that dude looked like he wanted to cry by the end of I mean, like, it was bad, bro. I don't know if some of you guys saw, but he posted on Twitter yesterday. IONQ down about 1.3 as well. And I don't know why Skrelly, like, with Tess, it was weird because I think Skrelly did a good job. I think Tess did a good job, but Skrelly just kept asking her questions. That's it. He was just like, so what about this? What about this? What about this? There wasn't like a real debate. But with this new guy, I think he kind of learned that, like, that's not a good strategy because she had an answer to every question. Even if he didn't like the answer, she had an answer. In this debate, that guy just didn't have an answer. And he straight up called him an effing idiot. Like, it got that bad, bro. It was great entertainment. But with Tess, it never got to the point where it was ad homs or anything like that. Like, you know, they threw some shade at each other, but it wasn't like, dude, you are stupid. Like, you are just an idiot. Because she knew enough about quantum to be able to defend herself and explain her positioning and make her arguments. With that guy, I mean, dude, like, we got to watch a clip of it later. It was hilarious, bro. Like, it was crazy. He got cooked, bro. I'm sorry. Like, as a debate person analyzing this, I was watching it last night. I was like, oh, this is not, like, Skrelly is just going after him. So that was fun. We'll watch a little bit of it later at the end of the show. All right, let's talk about Oracle. Let's talk about AMD. We got a big event today. Let's see what's going on. And the person to help me talk and discuss all of this is Mr. Jose. Jose, what's up?
What's going on, man? And good morning to you and good morning to your community. Pretty excited. We have, like you mentioned, that AMD event, that Oracle event. And I couldn't even watch that debate that you were just talking about. It was so cringe. It's like you could tell when someone knows at least something about it and someone who's just trying to, like, maybe fluff it up. And yeah, it was a little horrible.
Yeah, it was. We'll watch a little bit of the clips later, but it was one of those things where I was just like, goodness, dude, this is, you know, sometimes you just don't show up if you don't know what you're talking about. But if we ever were to have a semiconductor debate, you'd be the first person I have on my team because I know you know what you're talking about.
Thank you. First pick here.
First pick, 100%. Tell me what you thought about these Oracle numbers and what does it mean for the broader AI trade?
Well, first, overall, it's just crazy the demand we're seeing. Right. I mean, we keep getting kind of these crazy stories. I mean, we kind of got like that OpenAI and Google story a few days ago. And in my opinion, it's just telling us that this demand AI story is still crazy. It's not slowing down. I mean, during the, I don't know if you had a chance to maybe listen to some of the earnings call, but Larry, the CTO, or pretty much the owner of the company, gave two examples of how crazy the demand is. The first story he gave us was, he mentioned that he actually is getting phone calls nowadays for saying, hey, look, I don't care how much AI compute you have. I need it all. Can you give it to me all? I don't care if it's in Asia. I don't care if it's in Europe. I don't care where it's at. I just need as much AI compute as you can give me. And he mentions that's the first time he's ever had phone calls like that, but it's becoming not a regular occurrence, but it's something that is now happening with this AI infrastructure space. The second story he kind of talked about during the earnings call was he is now in the point where he has to wave off customers. He's saying, I can't serve you. I just don't have the demand for it. I don't have the capacity for it. So either you have to unfortunately go somewhere else, or you have to wait on this massive backlog that we have. And people are waiting on the backlog. So overall, I think that just showcases the demand that we're seeing here with AI solutions.
So I didn't listen to the call, but you're saying he said that he is turning customers away because of how much demand they have.
Yep. So he's like, he said we're waving them off. Wow. Or if not, we tell them we have to put them like in this massive backlog that we were working on. And you kind of saw their RPO grew to $139 billion. And this was even insane, right? So what we have here, it was going to be the next point, is they are expecting growth to grow from RPO grew 41%, but they expect for the next fiscal year to grow 100%. Yeah. Right now, RPO is at about $139 billion. So if we kind of take that to true numbers, that's about $280 billion by the end of next year. And that's
that is building. Insane, bro. That's crazy.
It's insane. And then they mentioned that they still believe fiscal year of 2027, it maybe might not follow that growth, but it's still going to continue in fiscal year of 2027. And when it comes to growth stories, right, you normally start with a smaller base. So you see those growth rates percentage be really high. And then obviously throughout the years, because you're starting from a bigger base, you see that growth rate maybe diminish a little bit. It's the opposite here. So fiscal year of 2024, or fiscal year of 2025, they already grew revenue at some strong levels, but they expect bigger growth rates, not just bigger numbers, but bigger growth rates, even though they're starting with a bigger base. So I'm pretty excited for Oracle. Luckily, Oracle has been talking about this OCI, or Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, for a while now. But I think this is one of the first times that it's no longer just a promise that they've been giving. It's actually, you're actually seeing the numbers on paper. The final thought I want to mention to your viewers is they had capital expenditures being somewhere around 19 or $20 billion for this fiscal year. That actually jumped an extra $1 billion. And the reason being is they had the opportunity to buy more AI chips, and they're not going to miss out on that opportunity. So they increased their capex for the end of the fiscal year above what they originally guided. And for this new fiscal year, which they just started, they got guiding for $25 billion. And they mentioned that this is pretty much a base. If they're given the opportunity to buy more AI chips, expect this capital expenditure to be much higher. And it's not like they're just building to build; they're building because of that massive RPO that they have in stack with them.
If you owned Apple, Jose, and you're seeing Oracle, you're seeing Nvidia, and then you see Liquid Glass, do you get the hell out of Apple?
You punch the air nonstop. You're mad that Apple is not innovating. I think Apple is becoming that. I don't know. It's becoming a more of a common theme, calling Apple the next Intel. I think it's still too early to tell that, but it seems like it's going that direction. I don't really see the innovation for it. Obviously, it has a good business. I'm not questioning its business model, right? Its business model is amazing. The ecosystem it has brought up, but I do believe the innovation is needed. And I think Google is doing a great way where they're cannibalizing themselves with AI, with all this AI. And I think that's what you need to do with this AI market. I feel like Apple is a little bit too worried of how their business might change with AI. So they're not willing to innovate at a rapid speed. Where maybe some of the other players are like saying, hey, look, even if we cannibalize ourselves, I'd rather us cannibalize ourselves than have some of our competitors eat up our market share. Right. So I think that's one of the things. I'm not a huge fan of Apple, but regardless, I mean, financials for them are really good right there. They're massive free cash flow machine and cash generator.
Okay, so Oracle beat across the board, incredible earnings. It goes to show that the demand for AI is not slowing down anytime soon. Last quick question on Oracle, then we'll talk about AMD. Any understanding you got of NVIDIA's fiscal year 2026 based on what Oracle said? Is there anything we can take away from it?
I mean, just if if the demand for Oracle is insane, the demand from all these other cloud service providers is insane. So I don't believe we're going to see a slowdown in capital expenditure anytime soon from these big players. And I think for NVIDIA, it just continues to give us that bullish thesis that there's no top right now in this AI space, at least not from what we're seeing, right? That can change over time, but as of right now, I think NVIDIA is still going to be able to continue to grow in its revenue segment. And if in the future, who knows, we maybe open up the Chinese market for them again in some aspect, I think that would be a massive bull case for the company.
Right. Okay. AMD. So big event this morning. I have no idea what exactly they're talking about, but people are hyped up. What is Lisa Su trying to show the world today?
So this very similar to NVIDIA, they try to release a chip on a yearly basis. This chip that they're going to release is going to be the third chip. So they had the MI300 released 2 Decembers ago. They had the MI325 released about 6 months ago. And they actually mentioned that, hey, look, the MI350, which is going to be released now, is ahead of schedule due to demand. So instead of releasing it in December, they're going to release it now in June. So that's what is really happening with this AI event, is they're going to release a chip that, in theory, what AMD says is a competition to NVIDIA's Blackwell. That's a whole different story, but I do believe this market, I'm bullish in AMD, but not bullish where they can overtake NVIDIA, if that makes sense. They've hyped it up in a lot of their prior earnings that they're seeing strong demand for the MI350 and that they have new customers. So I do think the market is expecting a big player to come up in the stage with AMD. They already have Meta Platforms and Microsoft as big customers of their MI300 platform. So in theory, you want those customers to still be a customer of the MI350. Now, the expectations for AMD is that maybe an Amazon or a Google enter the stage this year, this event. If that's the case, I do believe that can be seen as a very hype, bullish sentiment for AMD stock.
Okay, so basically, we're going to get new details on the chips they're producing. And is this something the street doesn't know about at all, or are we kind of expecting?
No, the street is prepared. They know about this AI chip. What they're not, what they don't know is if they're getting a net new additional customer, being in the cloud service provider, because those are the ones that really spend all the money, right, on the AI spending. So right now they only have 2 players, kind of not spending the levels that they spend on NVIDIA, but spending some money on it, and that's Microsoft and Meta Platforms and Oracle. Oracle is also spending on them. But 2 companies that have a big wallet that are not spending on AMD's AI GPUs, they might be spending it on CPUs, but on the AI GPUs, those 2 wallets that have been closed are Google and Amazon. So they're not getting any money from them. So if they get one of those, that could be even a $1 or $2 extra billion in revenue for AMD is amazing for their bottom line results. So I think that's more what the market is unsure of, if we're going to get that new customer and how big their wallet is.
Right. Okay, a couple quick questions for you, Jose, before you leave. But before that, real quick, Jose's newsletter. Everyone, please make sure to check it out. What the chip happened. I still love this name. Every time.
Yeah.
I love this name. It's the best one. But yeah. I believe it's every other day newsletters in the semiconductor space. So you guys can subscribe to that and get some updates every day.
Yeah, especially when there's a lot of news. I mean, this week it's been every single day. If it slowed down, so obviously I'm not just going to put fluff in it. But I mean, we've had a lot of great updates on the semiconductor space. So this week it's been almost every day. And a lot of easy way to digest what's happening here in the AI space. I mean, NVIDIA had their conference yesterday at GTC Paris. So I talked about some of the events that happened there. We've had some interesting earnings in the AI space. So definitely a lot of, all the information there is free.
Yeah, 100%. And Jose understands this space just so well, dude. Like if I have a question about semis, I'm like, Jose probably has a video on his channel. And he's actually talking about it. Speaking of other semis, Micron, this is up 20% in the past month. Do you think NVIDIA giving them a little bit of a nod at GTC was a good thing?
Definitely. I mean, Micron is a great partner of NVIDIA for a lot of their AI chips. There's also, I think today they announced that they are spending more, on building some more capacity and manufacturing here in the United States. So obviously that's bullish as we want to see more chips being built here. And they just recently announced kind of like some updates to their next generation of AI memory, HBM4. So there's some strong momentum with Micron. I don't own Micron. To me, while I do see bullishness on the HBM space and kind of escaping some of the commodity, the memory market, nothing bearish behind it, but I'd rather put my money in more direct AI chips. But I definitely see the massive bullish case here for Micron. And they do report earnings pretty soon. And there's a lot of tailwinds within AI PCs, AI data centers, and some of the wins they have with NVIDIA.
Any thoughts on Navitas pumping 400% because of this NVIDIA thing? Or is this just pure FOMO and hype?
I think a little bit of both. I mean, with this one, you do have... I do want to say the partnership with NVIDIA is nothing that's giving revenue at the moment. It's more of a partnership of innovating tech. And NVIDIA is playing with, it's also partnering up with other players in this same market. You have Texas Instrument, you have Infineon that they've partnered for the same solution. Navitas and their management actually were just at a conference call, and they said that they're actually very bullish in it. So they're, if obviously less than $2 billion market cap, if they get NVIDIA as a potential customer, that could be bullish. I do believe a lot of those expectations have been priced in, but obviously the market can continue to run up. To me, not a risk to reward ratio that I like, but there's definitely a growth story ahead.
Also, Jose, I think it's time we finally come clean and we admit to everyone that the stock display behind you, unfortunately, is AI. Well.
It's AI. It's 100% AI. Everything.
It looks good though. It looks really good.
Thank you. It's the lighting and some prompting, but yeah, it's all AI.
It looks good though. Okay, so we talked about Micron. Here's a question. Broadcom had good earnings. Stock kind of was flat after those earnings. Does that continue to show you this Oracle trend of like, hey, this trade's not going anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, Broadcom had a great. You see that massive rally it up since its low on early April. So I'm actually surprised how well it held up, even though it dropped after earnings. It held up a lot of those gains. So I mean, Broadcom definitely benefiting. I mean, they have massive customers here, and they continue to believe that their chips are gonna kind of be a nice space here in the AI market where you don't want to be fully dependent on NVIDIA. I don't own Broadcom, but I definitely see the bullish case behind it. At these price points, maybe I'm not a fan of the risk to reward ratio, but it doesn't mean that the stock can't go higher.
Right. All right. Pretty cool. So, Jose, you continue to be bullish on NVIDIA, I imagine.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. There's no question.
My conviction starts to get deeper and deeper. We've been talking a lot about all these stats around ChatGPT and how much they're growing and their user 1 month retention. And it just goes to show you, if this is the AI product of our lifetimes, that's the worst it's ever going to be. It really does feel like there's a life cycle for NVIDIA. Was there any core takeaway from what Jensen said at Paris yesterday as well?
At Paris, no. I mean, it's just Europe is maybe not as fast in AI data centers. So they're starting to, he mentions, wake up in this AI infrastructure race. So you're expecting maybe more revenue to come in from maybe the European region. But I agree. I mean, AI is the worst it is right now. And if this is the worst, I can't imagine what we're going to be a few years from now. That's going to continue to push the AI demand. I mean, the amount of thinking that goes in inference, that goes on all these solutions. We saw, I don't know if you saw that Starbucks news that they're going to integrate Copilot into their baristas. I think they're starting a program already where some AI solutions are entering now into the Starbucks world. I can't imagine where other kind of fast food places don't start using it as well. So yeah, very bullish about AI agents, robotics, autonomous vehicles. I mean, what is there not to be excited about? The next 5 years, I think, are going to be amazing for consumers.
I agree. Last quick question. Meta taking that 50% stake in Scale AI. It just continues to prove more investment in the ecosystem, I would imagine.
Yeah. I mean, Mark maybe is a little bit salty that his Llama 4 didn't do as well as expected. So he might be trying to find ways to better the Llama 5 solution. But yeah, I agree. I think right now you're seeing massive investments in the AI space, both from private, from governments, and from the public space. And sentiment is still bullish, for very, very much bullish for the AI ecosystem.
Got it. Love it, Jose. Thank you so much. Jose's Twitter in the chat, and What the Chip Happened, his newsletter. You guys can subscribe to it as well. Jose, thank you. I will talk to you later.
Appreciate it, man. Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye. All right, market's going a little bit green as we get into the second hour of the day here. Oracle right here up 12%. S&P 500 is at 601. Now, Besant is testifying again. This poor man, bro. These guys, I think this is like his fourth congressional testimony that he's done in front of the budget committee. And I get it. They're trying to pass a new bill, but like he's been testifying a lot this year. And he did say yesterday, if we don't raise the debt ceiling, we will have a crisis to the likes of 2008 or 2009. So he was trying to, tell everyone we need to raise the debt ceiling. But yeah, he is still testifying right now as well. And so we should probably get some updates from what he says. Broader markets are going green. In terms of some headlines right now, India and the U.S. have hardened their stance in trade talks as July deadline looms. Okay, so that's actually a little bit more bearish in terms of them sticking to their positions, not really willing to give any concessions. That India deal, again, that one might get delayed also based on this investigation with Boeing now. I would imagine the Prime Minister of India is, I would say at least for the next week, not going to be concerned that much about trade deals and more so concerned about the families that are affected by the Boeing tragedy that happened this morning. So that could also cause a delay on that. Iran's foreign minister says the IAEA's resolution further complicates the next round of nuclear talks with the U.S. So again, the IAEA basically said that Iran violated the nuclear proliferation treaty this morning. That's not a good thing for an international agency to say that. So Iran right here is saying, hey, that's going to make it tough for us to negotiate with the U.S. if they continue to say that. And Goldman Sachs cut their 12-month U.S. recession probability to 30% from 35%. So you got a little bit of a cut right there. Joby is down about 7% right here, and Grabby Crab down 3%, getting hit. Again, same thing I'll say for Grab. You either believe in the story or you don't. I mean, you buy this dip if you believe they're going to do something with the $9 billion they have in cash now. And if you don't, then you don't. But that's the reasoning for why you buy the dip. From a fundamental perspective, again, we've been through these numbers over and over and over again. The numbers are absolutely in the right direction, and they're going in the right direction. This is now a question of how the market is perceiving what they're going to do with the cash on hand. I mean, it's incredibly undervalued to me going below 4. This is basically my average. My average is 450. So we're at 458 on my average. You got to ask yourself, do you believe they're going to use the money in a strategic way? And if they do, what does that mean for the stock? And for me, I think that means massive shareholder appreciation as they deploy that capital meaningfully. But that's not going to happen tomorrow. So it's one of those theses where you just sit back and kind of see how it plays out, even if it takes time to play out. The one thing, though, that I'm not going to do is sell because I see Oklo running up 50% a day. It's just like at some level, all right, that's the part of the portfolio that's not moving. And I'd rather have it move dramatically towards the end of next year as it all comes together versus try to time it. It's just not easy to do that. But you don't also have to buy into it. And if you don't have that much conviction, you can sell too. You can take a little bit of a loss and move to something else. I'm sure HIMS will probably move up to 65 and back down to 55 way quicker before Grab moves to 7. So if you're playing it for pure volatility, there's plenty of other names. If you're playing it for an investment, you buy the dip and you kind of just let the story play out. Some of you guys saying right here, I bought the dip, just bought more Grab, bought 500 shares, I bought more Grab. Again, you're not alone buying Grab. You're Howard Marks, Ray Dalio, you got some of the best investors in the world that are loading to these positions. You can think of that whatever you want to think, but I just don't think they're buying it for a 2%, 3% move, or they're buying it to sell if it goes down 5% from their entry price. Like these guys, these guys don't take positions to day trade. They're not hedge funds. They make investments like a Bill Ackman, right? When he makes an investment, he's in it. Outside of Netflix. In Netflix, he got a little bit too scared and he left. But usually when they make an investment, they're in it. They will be there through thick and thin because they trust in their due diligence. That's the point of being an investor. You have to at least trust yourself, even if you don't see the stock go up from your entry price in the first year of investing. And you give it some time. And I think that's kind of the approach you have to have here as well. Now, obviously, Robinhood and Palantir spoiled us. But again, a lot of people weren't here when Robinhood and Palantir were not spoiling us, right? As a lot of people were not here when Palantir for 24 months was stuck at $7. So it's like you've been through the thesis and the experience many times. You kind of just say, all right, you kind of know what it feels like. But then you have to go, do you have conviction? I had conviction in Palantir. It kind of worked out. I have conviction in Grab. I don't know if it's going to work out, but that's the whole asymmetric nature of the opportunity in the first place. Google right here, 176 up about or down about 0.70%. Amazon 213, that goes green. Palo Alto 198, that's down 2%. And Walmart and Uber, both of those are slightly red on the day as well. Dude, when is Chime going public? Is it at 12 p.m.? The ticker symbol is CHYM, Chime Financial. Who's buying it? Is anyone buying this one? CHYM. Matt says these guys will pull a Chris Patel in and out. I love Chris, but no, Chris has a high standard. He's like, if it's not moving, I'm out. If it's not moving, I'm out. Now, granted, to be fair to Chris, he does have actual investments that, you know, he stays long in. But Chris wants to see a move. And if not, he moves on. But even Chris, I mean, like, dude, VG IPO'd at 25. I think Chris bought the IPO, if I'm not wrong. This thing dropped to 7. Now it's at 16 in about, in what, 4 months, 3 months? It was at 7, April 7th. Okay, so it IPO'd at 25. And then immediately, this was, you know, if they had IPO'd right now, it probably would have been better. But immediately you get a 50% retracement. Then you get a 70% retracement at 8. Then you get an 80% retracement at 680 in April with the tariff stuff. And now you're back to 16. So, and from my understanding, Chris did not sell any of his VG. He bought a lot more when it was in the single digits. So there's some investments where, you know, you just kind of hold on him. And this one is stock. I don't think this one's options for him. So he didn't really have the time part to worry about. But there's some things where you just believe in that thesis, you know, and you let the thesis play out. And Matt as well. Yeah. Matt and him both bought this thing. They both bought the IPO and they bought the dip. And, you know, that's also one of the parts where you realize you're becoming a better investor. When a stock dips, because every stock is going to dip eventually, you need to ask yourself, do I know more about the market about this stock? That's what really differentiates you as an investor. And if you know more, like Matt knew way more about Rocket Lab, you know, than the market when it was at $4. A lot of us knew way more about Palantir when it was at 7 versus the market. When you know more about the market and then you put your capital against what you know, and then it works out because the market inevitably catches up, if you're right, then, you know, I think that is the confines, or at least the most emblematic way to describe what it means to be good at investing, or at least good at stock picking, I would say, even if it's not good at investing. And that's the game that we're in, right? We're not investing in the S&P, and we're trying to beat the S&P. I know, yes, you should invest in the S&P as a safe play, but a lot of us are picking individual stocks for that reason, to be able to beat the index, which is the market, because the market might not be recognizing a Grab right now, or a Palantir, or a Robinhood, or a Rocket Lab, or a HIMS, you know? And that's kind of the nature of this whole game at the end of the day. Yeah, that's why you need conviction in your positions and not just following the crowd. 100,000%, dude. And conviction is addicting. When you really develop conviction, now the problem with conviction is you could have conviction and be wrong, right? And that's why investing is so hard, bro, because you could have conviction and be wrong. Like Druckenmiller had a lot of conviction when he tried to time the .com crash, and he was right, and then he was wrong, and then he was right, and then he was wrong, and then he was really wrong. And when he lost $1 billion, I think it was like $3 billion, when he got back in after getting back out, when everything was going up, and then it just all crashed. And it's one of those things where this is why investors that are legendary get so much praise, because it's so freaking hard to have conviction when everyone's wrong and be contrarian, but also to make sure your conviction doesn't bankrupt you if you actually are wrong and everyone is right. It's a tough game, but that's also what makes it fun to, you know, try to explore the game in general as well. RCAT is going insane. Okay, so yeah, this also makes me feel like AIRO is going to have Arrow a good IPO if this thing is up 9%, likely on that executive order that Trump signed on drones yesterday. That's why this stock is probably up 9% here right now. JSL, thank you for the $20 super chat. I talked about Grab for the past 10 minutes, so if you just rewind, you can figure out what we talked about. The reason they're down is because they're convertible note raise, and ultimately you buy the dip if you believe that they're going to do something good with the money. You stay away from it if you think they're not going to do good with the money. Speaking of investments, here's a question I want to ask everybody. This is a question that Doug asked me, and I think it's a good question to ask the entire chat because we're talking about stock picking, all that stuff. What are the best boring investment opportunities right now in the market? What are the best boring investment opportunities in the market? What do I mean by that? What is something that's boring, aka something that's not gonna, you know, like move like a Robinhood or something, but it is exciting, right? It's an exciting name. It's a name that, like, I mean, I guess one could say Grab because it's definitely boring, but I think the downside is limited at 460, trading at freaking 50% cash right here. So like that would be one of my picks. But what is a pick that's like not a high flyer name that people don't talk about that often? That's boring. Chris says UNH. That's a good one. People do talk a lot about UNH because it's had a lot of controversy, but that is fair. UNH is very boring, I guess, from it's not a high flyer like a HIMS or anything. But dude, I mean, the amount of free cash flow these guys are doing, the multiples they're trading at now down 50% from 640 to 311. You could definitely say it's boring, but it might not be boring when it does have a mean reversion recovery. If it ends up having that thesis play out. Nike. Okay, that's fair. You do get the dividend on Nike, kind of trusting Ackman understands that as well. PayPal, I would definitely say PayPal, dude. I'm going to do another deep dive with PayPal on this, like a deep dive episodes, the series that we're starting. I'm going to get Roy, Neil, and a couple other people, and we're going to try to look at PayPal again because I do think it's very undervalued. I wouldn't buy it over Robinhood. I just, from a growth perspective, but I do think it's undervalued. Fartcoin for sure. That's a fair point. That's definitely an exciting one, even if it's not boring. Palantir is not a boring one. AMD is not boring. ET, I agree. That one's a bit boring, but that one pays a nice little dividend as well. Dude, I always call this reality when it's realty. I say, reality income. It's like, no, it's realty income. But yeah, you got this one. I think there's some better REITs though, which are, which Steve has talked about, like ARES or Ares Management. Well, I'll get Steve to talk more about this one. He wrote an article about this one. He's thinking this is another SLG. SLG is back at 60. He bought this one at 19. So that one was boring at the time. It's doing very well. AutoZone, yeah, that's a fair one. Could argue that's definitely a more boring investment. Their earnings were not horrible. Meta is not boring. Okay, Meta is pretty exciting. SoFi, I mean, that actually, yeah. Why? Like, because it has been boring the past couple months. Yeah, that does make sense. But look, I cannot blame anyone who says their top pick for the next 6 months is SoFi. I really couldn't. Although I don't love it as a long-term investment. And when I mean I don't love it, I'm thinking about in comparison to Robinhood, right? I just think like Robinhood would be a much more integrated financial ecosystem that's going to grow and there's going to be all this innovation. But like over the next 10 years, I think SoFi will be fine. So it is a good long-term investment. But in the next 6 months, because it has barely moved this year, I could see this one breaking out. I could absolutely see that happening. So I think that's a fair argument to make as well. Sprouts Food Market, SFM, is that the ticker on that? Yeah, didn't this one have a big move last year? This one was up in 2023. Yeah, dude, it's up 111%. I remember they had one earnings. I think it was Q2 2024, and we were just covering on a regular market close, and it was up like 30%. And I was like, why is this up so much? Does anyone shop here? Sprouts Farmers Market? I don't think I've ever shopped there. Upwork, dude, this stock was talked about a lot in 2022, but like AI is definitely, it feels like a headwind initially, even though it could be a tailwind. But like the whole point of Upwork is to hire people that do like small tasks, like graphic design. I feel like AI can do a lot of that stuff now. That is one thing to think about. Intel, yes, for sure. Even though this one's been stuck as well. Intel at 20.52. This one's basically been 18 to 23 for the past year, ever since the CEO left and they had that, they cut the dividend about 7 months ago. That one's also been flat. Qualcomm's been at the same price for a year. I do not know enough about, all I know is they have a big partnership with Apple, but I don't know enough about Qualcomm in the semiconductor space. So that one I have to do a lot more research from. Robinhood is a scam. I promise you Robinhood will be less than $40. I really do hope. I would not be upset if we get less than 40 because Chris would be the happiest person on the planet if Robinhood gets to less than $40 because they're a scam. Because he would buy into that scam really quick. Oracle was boring last week. That's fair. And now Oracle is, wow, 200. Not too boring today. Not too boring today. Adobe. Look, Adobe is a boring one. And, I read a lot of your comments last night. It's mixed. It's mixed. A lot of you guys actually work with Adobe. And so someone was like, I'm in the film industry. I work with Adobe every day. They're dead. They're not going to survive. And then someone else was like, this is one of the most undervalued plays. Steve obviously thinks it's very undervalued from a numbers perspective. I don't know, dude. I don't use Adobe. I've used it in the past. I don't love the product. I'm not a professional though. So it's a little bit too complicated for me. Canva, when they go public, I'm buying that IPO immediately because I think that product is just so intuitive and user-friendly to engage with. And I just don't know what Adobe's moat is outside of the fact that they have a massive lock-in effect. I don't think their products or services are that much better than a lot of the other AI tools that are out there. But is it undervalued? Yes. I mean, if you read Steve's article yesterday, absolutely. The numbers are, compared to other SaaS companies, cheap, like very cheap. So I expect a pump on earnings today. As long as they have any level of meaningful earnings, I expect a pump. But I don't know if I want to hold it for the long term. Kava. Okay, that's fair. Is Oklo still moving today? Speaking of not boring investments, Oklo. Yeah, dude, Oklo diluted shareholders by $400 million yesterday. Street doesn't care. Up 2% or about to be. It's down 1%. It was down 10%. So like a complete recovery on Oklo. Yeah, the thesis and the cult is heavy on that one as well. Lyft and Cake. Dude, I liked Lyft. I almost bought it at $9. I never pulled the trigger. I saw their free cash flow margins when it was at 9, and I was like, this is not something to ignore, but I ignored it. Now it's at 15. And then Cheesecake, I have a good sense of this brand because I've eaten here so many times, but I've never bought the stock. There is a nice little divvy. I got to go deeper into this one. I know Jeremy likes this one as well. Speaking of cult, I bought some ASTS this morning. Who bought ASTS? Who bought it based on what we looked at yesterday? Again, I want to buy it just based on this community, bro. This community is insane. The amount of DD these guys are doing. It is just like, I think the thesis there makes sense about connectivity and all the stuff we talked about yesterday. Valuation obviously is a bit aggressive if you think they're not going to grow. If you think they're going to grow, then the valuation's cheap. But this community is something different, bro. And it's not like GameStop, AMC community of, oh, stock needs to go up. It's like people that really spend time researching and understanding this company. And they've been doing this since it was $2 and they still think there's a 10x available, which is the exciting kind of part of how deep that community is. I would kind of want to wait for a dip though. Like I kind of don't want to buy at 37. This is basically 52-week highs. And so I wouldn't hate a dip, but then again, I don't know if I'm going to get one on this stock. JK, thank you for the $5 super chat. Amit, you and the community make having conviction much easier. Thank you. Melly and Axon, two of my best. I think they're great for patient investors. JK, thank you for the super chat. And that super chat, even though your initials are JK, is not a joke. So I really, really appreciate that. That was a good one. That was off the top of the dome. I need some credit for that one. But anyway, Mercado Libre and Axon, I love these companies. They've done very well. Unfortunately, I'm not in them. Mercado Libre, basically Amazon of Latin America. Jason was saying this on Tuesday as well. You just buy this one, right? You buy it and you hold it. And then Axon, who would have thought body cameras was going to have the type of moment that it had? But over the past 5 years, there's been a lot more demand for body camera infrastructure. And as well, you guys saying that's cringe. That wasn't cringe, dude. that was intellectual manifestation of humor in the moment, dude. That wasn't cringe. Maybe what I said right now was more cringe, but still. But Axon and body cameras, dude. I mean, again, there's just been a lot more demand for this. Someone told me about this stock at 500, and I didn't really care much about it. It's up 160% in the past year. In June of last year, it was 297. So they've just consistently put up the right numbers. And those numbers have obviously done very well for them. Oracle right here, again, back above 200, 200.90, up 14% on the day. Market cap is now $563 billion. These guys have added $70 billion of market cap in the past 24 hours. Keep your day job. Do you think the riots could help or hurt Axon? I mean, most police officers already have body cameras, but if the riots create any level of demand for more body cameras on more police agencies and parts of the country that don't have them, then yeah, I think that probably would be a catalyst for Axon to have more demand as well. Dude, this is why the stock market's so amazing, bro. Oracle adds 70 billion in market cap in 24 hours. Like, this is why, and I know for all the real estate people out there, I get real estate's amazing. I get it. But like, there's not that many places on the planet where businesses can add tens of billions of dollars in value, and you can participate in that value exchange, whether on the short side or the long side, in less than 24 hours. I mean, like, your house is not going to go up by 15% in a day. That's just not going to happen. Now, granted, the house is more safer because, Oracle could go down 15% in a day. Oracle right now, 201, up about 14%. So it's like, obviously there's risks and rewards here, but it's just a fascinating thing to see a stock go up like this on a justified basis, right? The growth they put up is like, you know, you could understand why the market's paying for it. And you just can't do that anywhere. I mean, crypto, you could do it, but you know, crypto is a little bit more scary to me. The equity markets, you have a thesis on a company, they execute, you have your capital, you deploy it against that company, and then boom. Instead of waiting 10 years for a 7% return, it could happen within hours. Which is just incredible. Or it could go down 15% within hours, and then you're waiting 10 years to break even. Like that is the risk and reward. That's why people are so scared of investing. But you know, it helps to have a community come together and try to do some DD and hopefully be in the winners as well. A lot of guys saying Fubo as a this one's, I still don't know enough about this one, dude. All I know is that, you know, they're integrated with Disney. Maybe this is one counts for a deep dive. Maybe we should do a deep dive on this one, and I should get some experts to try to help us understand this one as well. Robinhood 75.13, Tesla 325, 75.12 on Robinhood, Nvidia 144.13 right here on the day. Fubo is a great multi-streaming product. Yeah, everyone who uses the product tells me it's amazing. It's just the stock. You know, I've never fully understood the thesis on the stock itself. All right, do we want to watch the quantum thing? Do we want to watch the quantum thing with Skrelly? Because it was quite entertaining, bro. it was quite entertaining. I think Tess is in the chat right now. Tess, I think you weren't there in the chat before, but I was saying in your debate, you held your ground because you stuck to what you know, and you were able to answer every question that he said, which is why I think it was a good debate. And he just kept asking questions, and I was just like, all right, well, where are these questions going? In this debate, I think he learned from your debate, and he like went, the passion he had in this debate, when you guys see it, he did not have on our channel with Tess. And I think it's because he was trying to do some gotcha questions, and he wasn't getting the gotcha answers because she actually understands quantum. This debate that he had yesterday, I mean, bro, this guy got demolished, and it looked like the guy wanted to cry at the end of the day, at the end of the freaking thing. And so let me see if I can pull it up right here. But it was one of those things where it's like he was able to get a really big win in this debate because the guy just like wasn't able to answer some basic stuff. And he called him an effing idiot at one point. Dude, the way he said it too, when he called him an idiot, he's like, the guy was like, you're calling me an idiot? He was like, yes, I'm calling you a fucking idiot. And I started crying. I legit started crying. I was like, I can't believe he actually just said that. And it was just hilarious to me. Okay, where is it? It's on his Twitter. It's on his Twitter. Where is it? Let me see if I can pull it up. Okay, here it is. Okay. there were some parts of this though that were just hilarious. They're just really good. And I was like, all right, so we got to see this. Okay, so it's a 40-minute thing. We're not going to do the whole 40 minutes, but we're going to go to, let's see if I can get the part that I want to get to. There's a bunch of different parts right. Okay, so maybe, okay, let's go to this part. Let's see. Let's start playing from here. Let's see. I'll skip around right here. But there's some other different parts right here. Jobs data was not the best. 248 initial jobs claims versus 240, but not enough to be kind of like, you know, scared that the jobs data is that bad. All right, so we'll play 5 minutes of it.
Setting up teams to capture CUDA queue.
No, you're lying again. So my wife, the woman I'm having a child with, she is her father was a senior guy at NVIDIA. We talk to NVIDIA people all the time. They laugh at quantum every day. Jensen said it was 30 years away. CUDA Q is 0.001%. They do CUDA everything because that's their job. They're not bullish on quantum. If they were bullish on quantum, they would spend $50 billion and build quantum computers. That's not what they're doing.
I disagree.
They're laughing
the reason they're playing it very delicately because the more quantum spotlight, it's less about AI, and they're making.
What a crazy conspiracy! No, the quantum computing industry is a zero right now. The AI industry is $200 billion industry. You think Jensen is afraid of quantum?
So Martin, you said something that I kind of want to get to because you said
an elephant is afraid of an ant. Come on.
You said 30 years from now. So
yes.
Is it? Which is it? Is it? It's never going to happen, or it's just not on the timeline people say it's on?
I think Shores will happen. Quantum computing being useful as a computer for anyone other than a cryptographer seems like it'll never happen.
Okay.
Like not.
Okay, here's another part of it as well.
The company had this much revenue, and it's
You're talking about like a Salesforce acquiring these like billions of dollar
Yeah,
companies.
they
Yes.
say it's accretive, dilutive, or immaterial. So how much revenue? They said they're going to do 50 to 70 in revenue. How much of the revenue is coming from the original quantum computing business? They will not answer that.
But why does it matter, I guess?
Yeah.
Because, Katie, it's so important because it violates the narrative that quantum computing is growing. It's not
But
growing.
aren't these quantum adjacent businesses? They're buying like unrelated things.
If you smush together 10 things that are not growing, you're not growing organically. You're growing inorganically, which Wall Street hates.
All right, so Salesforce for the past 15 years.
They have some organic growth, and then they have inorganic.
Some, but like, you're picking holes in it. Like
No. If you
Salesforce
had, that's Wall Street wants to see that you have organic growth despite acquisitions.
So Palo Alto acquires their cybersecurity platform. Are you saying they're just a dud?
No, it's okay and great to do acquisitions. What's not okay is to not disclose how much benefit you're getting from the acquisition versus your old business, which every company does. Palo Alto, everyone does this.
Why isn't that a required disclosure if it's so important? Why isn't the government require people to disclose that?
It sort of is, which again is why I'm using some of the words that I'm using. And I think that
Is it sort of? I mean, you can't have a sort of rule.
No, there's a lot of interpretation on some of these things, as I've learned. You should disclose how much revenue you are getting from a business you're buying. You really should.
You should, but you don't have to.
That is up to securities lawyers and the SEC. I've learned not to test their patience.
Okay, interesting. Martin, do you want to hang for a little bit more? Or you?
Yeah, I got all day.
All right.
I just don't like quitters that don't want to actually get into the discussion.
I think this was
This part right here got a bit wild.
This was such a good conversation when we were keeping it at the level of content and not personal.
It's not personal. I don't know this guy.
Yeah.
Bro, you're slandering so many people you don't even know.
It's okay.
Yeah, you're calling me a quitter? What are you talking about?
You are quitting. Every time I try to get involved with this conversation, you say, I can't.
Because I know people like you, and it's going to take a lot of exhaustion, mental capital, just to even entertain.
You just have to provide one interesting intellectual point.
That's what I say. You added intellectual point. You're calling me a fucking idiot.
Yes.
You don't know how to handle yourself, and I'm checked out of you. Like, I don't want to interact.
You're quitting. I get it. You're checked out. You're quitting. I got it.
Okay.
It's supposed to be debate, but you quit.
Sure. Okay.
Go
for it.
All right, Mark, we got for a couple more minutes. Can I ask you some rapid fire questions?
Dude, come on, bro. That was hilarious. Look, in a debate, if someone calls you out, and by the way, we're not gonna play the whole debate, but you guys can watch the whole debate. I watched the whole debate. Every time Martin tried to go deeper on a question, the other guy either didn't answer or he answered in some half-assed way. And so Martin followed up on what he said, and then he couldn't go deeper, which showed that he really didn't know what he was talking about. Dude, I've been in debates where I sucked and I didn't know what I was talking about. Like, I'm not going to debate someone on Rocket Lab because I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I didn't even know they had a launch yesterday. When the launch went up, I was like, oh, cool, it went up. I was like, oh, cool, great. Like, that's like, there's some debates you're just not prepared for, right? I wouldn't debate. But when you get into a debate and you want to have a one-on-one with someone and they ask you questions like they're supposed to do in a debate and you don't answer, or you answer in a way that is dismissive of the intent of their question, you deserve to be called out. It's a debate. Like, this is the whole point of discourse, right? The reason we don't all fight and kill each other is because we try to have some level of diplomacy by debating with each other, which means words can be aggressive, but that's better than getting physical. And so you have to embrace the nature of democratic debate. And so when Skrelly's out here saying, dude, you don't know what you're talking about, and saying it straight to his face, is it mean? Yeah. But that's also kind of part of the debate. Like, if someone just, like, that's what I did with the bear cave guy. When I said, hey, what's the ontology? And he said, I don't know what that, I'm like, how do you write a bear case on Palantir and you don't know what they're, like, that's like writing a bear case on NVIDIA and not knowing what a GPU is. It's like, it doesn't make any sense, right? Like, you would clown that person. And so that's the part that I got from the debate. And now that's not conducive of the entire quantum sector, quantum industry, but it's not a good look. I'll say that. It's not a good look. You can't have people that are out there that know absolutely nothing about this and then get clowned when, Martin tries asking them some more questions about the industry, and they really can't defend it. Now, granted, he's down on the short. So the pushback here is that he's losing a ton of money. And I don't know if he's going to be successful on this short, because at the end of the day, the markets can stay elevated and he can eventually get illiquid way sooner than the markets recognize that quantum is going to zero, if they ever do recognize it's going to zero. And by the way, Jensen saying that quantum has an inflection point yesterday is not helping Martin's case. But in terms of the debate itself, you know, I thought he just like, I thought he was able to show that the guy didn't know much about quantum. Now, and you got, you know, bringing up Martin's past, that's fine. I kind of don't care about that because yes, he went to jail, securities fraud, all that stuff. That has nothing to do with quantum. Like to me, it's a question of, okay, you could have a past and you could have something that went, you know, caused you to go to jail, et cetera. Like the question is, does the guy understand quantum and does the quantum community understand quantum? Like which one understands it better? And in these debates, at least in the last one right here, Martin has been showing that, you know, he knows it a lot better than some of these people. Does that mean he's going to be successful in the short? No. And quite frankly, that's probably all that matters in 5 years. Like, did he lose 100 million or did he make 100 million? But his past to me is irrelevant here. Like his past is his past. The question is, hey, is this about quantum? You know? And as of now, I think that debate was just funny because it's like, you're calling me an idiot? He's like, yeah. Dude, I've been in those debates before where I've had to be that guy. In high school debates, you know, we're not talking about quantum, but we're, you know, whatever debate topic we were discussing. Someone would be like, so you're saying I don't know what I'm talking about? I'm like, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying you have no idea what you're talking about. And you see the judge in the back start laughing because the judge is like, holy shit, you know, this guy doesn't care. Sometimes that level of aggression is necessary to win high level debates, but it's also important to make your opponent look like they don't, you know, necessarily know what they're talking about. So literal financial crime, but we'll hear him out. Yeah, dude, someone committing a financial crime, but we'll hear him out does not disqualify hearing someone's opinion. Like, I don't see that argument at all. Like, okay, he committed a financial crime. He went to jail for it, by the way, paid his debt to society by going to jail. So now he's unqualified to talk about anything. Really? How, like, if that's the standard we're going to put on everybody, then I guess we can't, you know, like everyone that has done a bad thing in the past or has went to jail, we're not allowed to talk to them. In fact, I think that's the worst thing for society. If people go to jail and then when they come out of jail, we're like, oh, we're not allowed to listen to their opinions because they did a bad thing in their past and they paid their dues. And now we're not allowed to listen to anything they have to say. I don't think that makes a lot of sense. Like personally, that's just kind of weird to me. Now, granted, if he wants to talk about securities fraud, you can say, hey, dude, you went to jail for securities fraud. I don't trust what you're saying. But he's talking about quantum computing. And so he's not accusing every CEO here of securities fraud. He's saying that, hey, I'm accusing them of actual fraud because there's nothing real to quantum. Now, then that leads to debate on quantum or good or bad, right? But that's not necessarily, oh, his past right here means that. And I don't need to shill for this guy. I don't care about this guy. I'm not sponsored by this guy. I don't give a shit. I'm just saying in general, if I went to jail in the past over something and now I try to talk about something in the future and I'm not allowed to have an opinion because of my past, I don't know. Like that's not the best rule in society, I would say. But overall, that debate was just funny, bro. As a guy who cares about debates, that was funny to me. Yo, Uzi, why are you still here, bro? Uzi's job. Oh, yeah, it's because your manager's in Chicago. This guy, bro. This guy's like, I can't make the market open this week. I can't talk anymore. I can't be in the chat. He can't get away from us, bro. I'm happy you're here, Uzi. Just every time I see you, I remember that on Sunday you were giving us this fucking sob story that you're not going to be in the chat anymore. Looks like you're here, sir. It looks like you're here. Not unqualified, but you can have to understand that he's not necessarily telling the truth. He could have an agenda. I think his agenda, no. So here, his agenda is his short thesis, 100%. The short thesis is he wants to make a ton of money from these stocks going to zero. So then that begs the question, okay, we get your thesis that you want to make money on the short, and we get the quantum community's thesis that they want to keep the stock elevated so they can keep having gains. So then the question becomes, who's right about quantum? And so your agenda obviously influences the way you think about something, but that cannot influence the substance of the actual argument. That is where you have to have a debate, right? That's where you have to have the meat and bones of like, hey, what is the truth or false claims around the sector as an industry? And then what does that mean for the IONQs, the Rigettis, et cetera, inside that industry? And at least in that debate that I saw, again, I watched the whole thing. And when he asked deeper questions about quantum and in terms of its use cases, there weren't really the best answers. At least Tess in her debate, she was able to explain all the, like, remember when she read off like 80 different companies that D-Wave's working with? Like, he didn't really have a response to that. And maybe Shay should have had that strategy of just like talking more about the use cases, because that's what Tess focused on. Like, he tried to go scientific on Tess and she focused on the business. And so she didn't let herself get caught up in the gotcha moments because she's obviously not a scientist. I think Shay tried to take him on from a scientific perspective, and you're just going to get demolished in that debate if you don't actually understand the science. You know, Martin's a guy that actually works with quantum computers all day. So like he has a much better, I mean, he's a computer programmer, right? So I think from that level, it's just an exciting saga to see play out. I want to see this over the next coming months of what happens, because either Skrelly's going to make a lot of money or lose a lot of money. It's just that simple. And I'm just curious to really see where this quantum thesis ends up going. Yeah, classic exactly what Lunar's saying. Classic stock versus fundamental debates. It's about the stock versus the fundamentals of this quantum argument. Loop Capital raises Palantir price target to 150. Wow. Holy moly. That's the highest street target, right? Or does Dan Ives have 150? No, Bank of America has 150. We already had 150 in Bank of America. The test debate is in the market close of Tuesday. So if you go to Monday. If you go to Monday's market close, that's where we have tests in the chapters. Yeah, that's a good point by Unbenefit. Dude, Trump is a convicted felon. Is he not allowed to talk anymore? Like, the president of the United States is a convicted felon. Are we not supposed to hear his opinion on what he says? That argument, dude, I just don't get that argument, dude. Yes, you went to jail. You paid your time in jail. You paid your dues to society. Like, you could not want to trust the guy. No one says you have to trust him. But to say he's not allowed to have an opinion simply because he went to jail, it's just a ridiculous standard to hold to everybody. It's a weird standard. You should try to get a D-Wave employee to debate him. Dude, I would love to get he would love to debate a D-Wave employee. I don't know if they would want to debate him. I would love to set that up. By the way, guys, the ARC team hit me up yesterday. They want to come on the channel and explain their SpaceX model. So they put out a SpaceX model yesterday, and hopefully we're going to set it up within the next week. They just put it out yesterday. The model is insanity to me, and I'm definitely going to, ask them how the hell they get to these numbers. But their base case is 2.5 trillion on SpaceX by 2030. I think that's insanity. I think that's absolutely crazy. SpaceX right now is at 350 billion. I don't know how the hell they get to 2.5. So I'm really curious to see. I know a lot of people can invest in SpaceX. I can't. I'm not investing in SpaceX, but I think as an intellectual thought project, it would be really interesting to see how the hell are they thinking SpaceX is going to be worth as much as Google in 5 years. Like, quite frankly, it looks like BS. Just straight up, like, it's like, what are you saying, bro? Like, what are you saying? Like, the Tesla 10x in 5 years, I still think that's also kind of BS. I think Tesla's going to do well. I don't know if it does 10x well. So I really want to ask them, where are you getting these numbers from? And when I went through their model, they're talking about Mars here. They're talking about colonizing Mars. And so maybe part of their ambitious assumptions right here is that we are going to colonize Mars soon. And I am just a bit skeptical that we actually colonize Mars by 2030. So yeah, I would be really, really interested to see how they come up with these numbers and try to ask them, where they get from. NVIDIA right here, 144.82, trying to get up to 145. Let me check resistance at 145. But that one is just below on these levels. Well, 144.92. All right, she's trying to do it. 145. Goodness gracious, dude. 1.5 million shares. Is it going to do what it did last time? 144.99. Someone needs to buy 145 million of NVIDIA right now to get us above the edge. But we got to see if we can get there. Yeah, you can invest in SpaceX via the SoFi ARC VX fund. That is also true. So there are some easy ways to get exposure. Granted, that fund has a lot of other stuff, but yeah, there are different ways to get exposure there. But also, the ASTS guy brought this up yesterday. He said after Elon said that he would decommission Dragon on Twitter, even though he might have just been trolling, he said from his sources, the government is starting to look at a lot of their contractors and vendors because they realize they can't trust one person. And the government's always known this, but they've been relying on SpaceX a lot. That's why Rocket Lab and ASTS went up last week. It's just the idea that the government might look to other sources, right? Which I don't think is bear SpaceX, but it just means that SpaceX might not get as much of the market if the government wants to be a little bit more conservative. And so that's one other thing to think about in that overall ecosystem as well. Yeah, we're not breaking 145, bro. They're not letting us break through 145. 1.5 million shares. Oh, GitLab did have earnings 2 days ago. Is this one still down? It fell like 12%, right? Yeah, it's still down. I mean, you're not getting a real recovery. It was at 50, went down to 41. Now it's at 44. It's a little recovery, but not moving too much right there. Amit, can you ask ARK why they sell positions on stocks for profits only to buy back at a higher time like Palantir last year? So part of the reason they do this is to rebalance. Like when they sold I think 80,000 shares of Palantir yesterday, it's because it becomes such a heavy weight in the portfolio that they need to trim some. They do this with Tesla all the time. Now, why do they sell Palantir at $12? Why do they buy Palantir at 25, sell it at 12 in 2022, buy Roku, and then buy back Palantir at 9? I don't know. That's more of a Kathy question than anything. But that's also probably, just not the best allocation of capital that they engage in. But in terms of the sales you see every day, a lot of that's just rebalancing. Oh, they're going to sell the SpaceX out of the fund if it starts running up. Yeah, that's also true in that fund. This is why I don't believe in these venture funds, bro. I believe you should get a direct access on the cap table or through an SPV or something, or have your own shares, even if it's through a third-party account, because the fund, you don't know what the fund's going to do with the stock. Like if Discord goes public, they might buy more Discord in the fund and sell some SpaceX, right? So maybe Discord's at a better attractive valuation than SpaceX. But then if you're buying the fund because you want SpaceX, not Discord, it definitely makes it a little bit more annoying. What will make Dixie go up? FX is killing me. Rate cuts would help, but we're not getting that anytime soon. I can understand how FX is definitely hurting some people. It was the opposite in January. The thing about the dollar right here is that there is a little bit less trust in the overall market about the US dollar. Now, that does not mean the US dollar is not going to be the world's reserve currency, but obviously everything that's happened with Trump and the tariffs and the restrictive rates that we have compared to the rest of the world, it's making people think maybe there's other alternatives. And that's why the dollar is as weak as it is. But, it might take some time. Chris says, send him a StreamYard. All right, let's get Chris onto the show. And let's get some of his thoughts on what's going on. In the meantime, let's get some updates and some coverage on PPI in the broader markets and oil, and we'll keep going from there.
We're going to see slower growth as we try to move away from a government-fueled, inflation-fueled, stimulus-fueled economy.
Reuters is saying Chime IPO at 43. Dude, the price is 27. That was the listed price. If they go at public at 43, this is going to be a $20 billion company. There's going to be at least an $18 billion company. My goodness, bro. Holy crap. That would be insane.
Back to the private sector and also rebalance the entire trading relationship of the globe. And given some of those major risky undertakings, economy so far is holding up well.
Yes, but and look, I want the economy to do well and markets to do well. But when the administration first took office at the very beginning, this idea of an interim disturbance wasn't their message.
True.
When they began to roll out the tariff policies and there was quite a blowback, then they said, look, we're going to have to go through a period of some pain or painfulness. But I mean, that's not what they wanted, and that's not what they initially sought.
And what they really wanted was for yields to come down, but that also didn't happen. By the way, Voyager still holding on, up 5%. Voyager was up 85% yesterday. When we talk about IPOs, just incredible. Palantir does have a $50 million stake in them. Tariq, thank you for the $10 super chat. Voyager also works in the space industry, and Palantir has a position in them. Yeah, I didn't buy into it. Adam, good friend of the channel, he got into their last private round, and I believe he has a lockup for like a year, so he's going to be holding his position. But yeah, I mean, what better time for Chime to IPO than now after all these successful IPOs as well? Chris, good morning. How are you?
Good, man. Glad we did that ASTS pod last night. I got a lot of thoughts out, and the other guy that you brought on, dude, was amazing. Killed it. So
yeah, he was awesome. I think a lot of people appreciated it, and it was a really good 2-hour session on ASTS. Chris, I want to get your thoughts real quick on this headline that Chime could IPO at a 50% premium. Like, are you thinking this is way too frothy, seeing all these IPOs?
I don't know what the business model. I mean, I know what Chime is. I just don't really know too much about it. I haven't really looked into it. It does show that, the companies coming out right now believe that the IPO market is a little bit healthier than where it was last year, and that things are actually getting bid up. So it does mean that the market, I guess, like the banks, they understand that there's a little bit of more risk taking right now, and it kind of makes sense. So I think the reason why I asked you for the StreamYard, believe it or not, is because someone asked right before, like, about the Dixie, right?
Yeah.
So here's the biggest challenge that we're going to run into for the next 3.5 years under the Trump administration. more than likely we're going to see a weak dollar for the prolonged short period of time. Why? Number one, how do you tackle this enormous debt that we have? Okay, so the strategy the administration right now seems to be taking is we're gonna inflate our way out of this debt. Okay, what does that mean? That means that we're likely to see negative yield growth, right?
Right.
So if you think about nominal versus real, that's where the key understanding should be for most people. Now, what does that mean? That means that if right now the Fed comes in and says, let's lower interest rates to 1%, and inflation is running at 2.5%, that means that if you think about it, the debt that we're servicing right now, especially short-term treasuries, we're only paying 1% on it. Inflation is running at 2.5, which means that the worth of the dollar is eroding at a faster pace, right, over time.
Right.
So the debt is also eroding at a faster pace. So think of it this way: if you have a currency that's devaluing, that benefits you as an export country. Like if you're trying to basically close these trade barriers, if the dollar is weaker, that means that the foreign currencies that are out there, they can actually buy more goods and services from the US at a cheaper price. So the equity markets are also going to do really well because remember, everything is on a nominal basis, right? So if you buy a company and it does, business in dollar terms and inflation is growing, they pass that inflation on, and that's going to end up benefiting their growth rate. So the Trump administration's goal is we're going to grow, and we're going to grow our way out of this problem. Well, the way that you're going to grow out of this problem is by devaluing the dollar. So this is not where you want to be super long on the dollar under the Trump administration,
Do you
Now,
think, what is the implication for equities if the dollar stays weak?
it's good.
Why?
On a nominal basis, it's good because that means that more services are bought in dollar terms, which means that now you're going to see, the price of assets rise, right? So that's why you're seeing this huge move up in gold. You see this huge move up in metals. Like look at platinum right now, right? Platinum's been on a run, silver's been on a run because these are real hard assets that if you have the dollar going down, you have that asset value going higher. So if the dollar value is going higher, the value of those assets are going down because relative to what you can buy, right?
Right.
You see this rally that's happening. So this is where we have to just kind of understand what the US is going to do to get itself out of this hole. So in my opinion, one of the things that they're going to do, of course, is lower a lot of interest rates, and what the Trump administration is kind of like pushing for that pretty strongly right now. Now the the Fed does not control long-term rates, okay? They only control short-term rates. So what you're going to end up seeing is something called steepening of the yield curve, okay? That means the price at which you pay for a short-term treasury, the interest that you pay on a short-term treasury versus what you're going to pay on a long-term treasury. As things steepen, what happens is, like, let's say right now the Fed starts to lower interest rates to, let's say, 1%. If the value of the long bond stays where it is, that means that now you've got this yield curve that's going to be relatively steep, right?
Right.
So you're not going to see nearly as much movement down on the yield curve on the long end of things. So the administration right now is focused very, very heavily on getting short-term rates down. And so what that's going to eventually do is kind of cascade people from short to medium to long. And so you will see, the long end of the curve come down slightly, but you're probably going to see way more downward movement in the short-term treasury markets.
So TLT?
So TLT will not benefit like, oh my God, like a rocket ship higher. So you have to use a very efficient strategy to basically take advantage of a limited up and downside. So if you think that TLT is going to get to like 110, like you're basically assuming that the 20 and 30 years are going to go to like 3.5%. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I don't even know if that's ever really going to happen again, considering that the era of ZERP may be like behind us, unless you get some really, really bad economic issues. I don't think that we're going to go into a ZERP environment. Now, do I think we're going to get into a lower rate environment? Yeah, absolutely. I think the Fed funds rate could go to 1 to 2%. And if that's the case, the 10-year will be around 3, and the long bond, like the 30-year bond, will end up being around 4. So if you think about it, it kind of works out where now TLT is kind of like range bound a little bit. So there's an upper range and like a lower range. And so you could theoretically make some money on just playing that range, So I don't think TLT is like, oh my God, the best investment if you're thinking that it's going to go to like 120, So
Right. Yeah, it's fair. So this is the new paradigm we're going to be operating in. Chris, what are they going to do with all this debt, bro? Like, we have to refinance almost 9.5 trillion. Are we going to do it at 4.5% rates, or how do you think this plays out?
Well, I mean, this is one of the reasons why the Trump administration is pushing Jay Powell to cut rates sooner rather than later, right?
Yeah.
Like, by pushing that topic, you're really trying to get a lot more of that debt front loaded. So basically, you're not necessarily like issuing a lot of long-term debt. What you're doing is issuing more short-term debt. And a lot of the policies that the Trump administration is pushing right now is to get more liquidity into the short and medium term debt markets to kind of support all that issuance. So you're seeing that with stablecoin legislation. You're seeing that with SLR ratio changes. And, the bills market is very liquid. So, a lot of companies are willing to put money in bills and get some sort of economic return rather than, just straight up hold it in dollars. So like right now, if you're a company like Google and you have $100 billion in cash, Google's not holding $100 billion in a bank account. They're probably like 75 to 80% of that is going to be in short-term treasuries that are yielding 4.5%. Now, there are companies out there like Palantir that are going to be impacted by that because most of their, like not most, but a lot of their net in, not a lot. I have to rephrase because they are generating a good amount of net income. A good portion of their net income is coming from the cash holdings that they have on their balance sheet that's giving them a real yield, and that's all 100% margin. So if interest rates go down significantly, that means that now Palantir will either have to kind of push out that debt, or not that debt, but that cash into, let's say, 5-year notes and get the same kind of yield, or they're going to have to just kind of eat it and say, look, we'll make up for the difference by, I don't know, growing our net income. So that could be a headwind for them. So, and that's going to be a headwind for a lot of companies that are holding on to significant treasury positions. And that's one of the, I would say one of the issues with Circle eventually, that right now they're getting a pretty good return on the cash that basically is supporting all these stable coins. But if interest rates were to come down significantly, Circle would have to theoretically either, not make as much money net income wise, or they would have to buy longer rated debt, right? And once again, that kind of serves the purpose that the Trump administration is trying to do, which is lower the overall interest rates. So I think the thing that we have to kind of understand is trying to understand what the yield curve is going to look like by the end of 2026.
Right.
Paul Tudor Jones did a really good video on this if you want to, but it was like almost like 14-15 minutes. So, it'll go over the heads of a lot of people, but he explained it very well. And that's more than likely the reason why you're seeing guys like Druckenmiller and everyone shorting treasuries. And they were shorting them in
this is 2
January.
minutes. Let's listen to 2 minutes of what he says, and then I think this goes to your point about why they're shorting treasuries.
Sure.
Give us a tip. What's the one long you would hit for the next contest?
I would say probably the yield curve. It just depends on where I think it'll be higher at that point in time. Mine would be very esoteric. So let me think. Well, I would definitely be betting on substantially lower front end rates. We'll have a new Fed chair within 6 months of that point in time, and I think Trump's going to pick someone who's going to be uber dovish.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the yield curve. Matt and I were actually emailing at like 4 a.m. about the yield curve because it's broken a lot of hearts, that steepener bet. And the way you lay it out, short end rates coming down, you have concerns about the deficit potentially boosting the long end. It seems like a no-brainer, but it feels like it just hasn't worked. So what's different this time?
Well, it's working. It's just, it's vol adjusted. It's just a slow moving train. But I think in the long run, it has to work. We are fiscally constrained, and we're going to have budget deficits of 6% plus as far as the eye can see. So one of the major offsets, if I was the president, would be to lower my interest rate costs by appointing a Fed chair who was as dovish as could possibly be. That's kind of the playbook when you're 100% debt to GDP and you're fiscally constrained. You can see it happening in Japan right now. He's Wade is reluctant to raise rates more than beyond 50 basis points, even though they have inflation. Pick a number somewhere between 2 and 3%. I think they fudge the numbers down all the time. You got wage growth at 3.5% there. So that's, historically the way that you get out of a debt trap is you run the lowest real rates possible. You lower your interest burdens. And I'm sure that's what we'll see beginning when the next Fed chair comes.
That's basically what you're saying, right, Kris?
Yeah. One of the unfortunate realities that we have to kind of face is that even though Donald Trump and the administration came off as fiscal hawks when they came in, everything that they're doing is kind of contrary to that, which is these tax cuts. Technically, if let's say if the Trump administration really had the balls to actually like fix things, they would allow tax rates to get back to where they were. Now, yes, would that cause a lot of rich people and people at the top to basically suffer a little bit? Yeah, obviously. Higher taxes means less money that goes towards investment, and you would see lower growth. But you would actually be able to kind of fix the fiscal problems, and that's not happening. That's why the Elon camp is kind of like sounding the alarm bell, saying, look, you don't need to do tax cuts right now. It doesn't make sense to support more tax cuts. Like right now is not the time. Like everything is good. You're supposed to be raising, cash during good times so that when bad times come, you have the ability to kind of, save yourself. So the Trump administration is like, look, there's already fuel on the fire. Let's like stoke the rocket ship.
Yeah.
And Elon and co is like, wait a second, no, like we got a really big problem with the debt. Let's kind of tackle the debt. And if that means that we have to kind of pay more for, pay more in taxes, then hey, that's one thing that's good. And then we could kind of cut a little bit in terms of in terms of expenses, and so we get back to a budget deficit that makes a lot of sense. And that's not happening right now. So I think the bond market recognizes this, and the administration's got their own set of ideals that they're going to apply. And by the way, like you have to remember that technically these are Republicans you're talking about. Republicans are always on the side of no, we're going to lower taxes. We're going to lower taxes. Like I think there's like some kind of commitment that all of these Republicans made in like the 1990s to basically say we will never raise taxes. They'll always lower taxes, but they'll never raise taxes.
Even when they almost raised or they were thinking of raising the millionaire tax, like even Trump, he was just like, well, I don't want to, but if the Congress people and if the senators really do want to do, like they all want to distance themselves from even a 2% raise on the richest people because it's just not part of their agenda.
I mean, unfortunately, no one wants to ever hear that, hey, listen, we need to cut back, especially among like wealthy people. These guys are the ones that with the real power. Like, I'm sorry, we have influence, but the rich are the ones that can throw money at these politicians and get them to vote in certain directions. And actually, that's one of the debates that we're having on Twitter, where I said, you got all these old timers in Congress that are basically beholden to like a lot of wealthy donors, and they'll vote like the donors tell them to, And the thing is like, and it's hard. It's really hard to put country over self-preservation. And a lot of these politicians, especially in the House, they got 2-year election cycles. That means that every 2 years they're up for re-election, which means that they literally have to keep these guys happy. Otherwise, the primaries, they get eliminated by their own party, if not by a challenger from the other side. So whenever you see like the House like members are a lot more animated in the way that they communicate. And the reason why is because they have to constantly show off to their donors, like, I'm fighting for you. I'm fighting for what you want. I mean, that's why like you got Soros's son what's his name? I don't even know his name, but Soares' son,
Alex. Yeah.
Alex. He's
Yeah.
got like pictures with almost every politician around the world. He's collecting these people like fucking Pokemon cards, bro. You know, you ever seen that? Like, you just see him. He's such a he looks like a creepy ass dude too. But literally everywhere you go, you just see him taking pictures with all these politicians. It's like, bro, what are you doing? You know?
All right, Kris, last question for you. The Iran oil Israel stuff, like, do you think there's any real threat that we have to worry about there?
I mean, I don't know, bro. I don't. The one thing I'll say, and this may be a controversial take, but it's not our job to basically be Israel's guardian all the time. Like, Israel's been goading us into problems in the Middle East for the last like 20, 30 years, and it hasn't really ended well for us. You know, this antagonized relationship we have with the entire Middle East. Primary reason for that is because of Israel. And right now, Israel's like, oh, look, Iran might get a nuclear bomb. And it's like, bro, just come on, man. Like, this is like WMD's Iraq Part 2. You remember that bullshit? Oh, Saddam's got nukes. We got to stop Saddam. It's like, we have to fucking invade. Now Israel's like, oh, they got nukes. We better attack them, America. And America, at least America now, like a lot of the politicians are like, whoa, hold on, Israel. Like,
well, even Trump has been distancing himself a bit, you know, like, and obviously that relationship is very important, but even he's been saying, we're not going to literally do everything you guys want us to do here. He wants to get, I mean, he wants to get deals, and he says they're close to getting this deal, but he said Iran's being a tough negotiator. And
anytime I hear about, like, we need to attack Iran, the first thing that comes to mind is there an election in Israel? Does Bibi Netanyahu got to like stir up some shit to make sure that he gets reelected again? That's usually my first thought. I mean, this guy's been in power for how many years now?
It's been a minute.
You know, so
do you think oil gets anywhere back below 60 anytime soon, or how do you think that's going to play out?
I'm sorry, say that again.
You think oil can get back below 60? Because one of the reasons CPI fell is because of energy. If this thing stays elevated, it feels like that's not the best for inflation.
I mean, the good thing is the U.S. producers can kind of ramp up production and make up the difference. Not to mention OPEC is on verge of just increase their oil production. So, you know, if there is, let's say, some kind of kinetic issue in Iran and you lose a little bit of Iranian production, the other OPEC members can more than make up for it. The U.S. shale drillers can make up for it. So I don't think that we get oil in like the 90s. Like, I mean, the estimate that Goldman said that, hey, oil might jump to like 120. I don't necessarily think that would be the case.
Yeah.
Not to mention, I don't think the U.S. is concerned with a real kinetic war where we're like invading Iran or something like that. Like, I don't think that's the case. If anything, you know, the Israelis will do what the Israelis do, which is usually either airstrikes on nuclear facilities and research things, or some kind of cyber attack or something to keep things. But for the most part, I think the Americans are kind of weary of fighting Israel's wars for it. And I don't think that, you know, it's going to be a major thing. And by the way, someone said in a comment section, like, oh, Kris is being semi-anti-Semitic. Bro, I love Jewish people, okay? But Jewish people are not Israel. Like, we got to stop that nonsense where we conflate every Jew to Israel. Like, that's not how it works. You know, Jewish
there is a difference between critiquing the Israeli government and then that being a direct attack. I think it's hard to say a critique of Netanyahu's policies, which is what you're talking about with Iran.
He's a warmonger, dude. Like, at this
and that doesn't mean you're anti-Semitic. That doesn't mean you hate Jewish people. That's like saying, oh, I think Trump sucks, therefore I hate Americans. You know?
Yeah, bro. I'm telling you, it's the same thing. Like, trust me when I say this, I am anti-terrorism. Okay, like 100% anti-terrorism. But even I know that there's ways to kind of fight terrorism that don't involve, like, I don't know. I'm going a little bit too political, so I'm going to dial myself back a little bit. But I think that there is definitely some dialogue. We need to do more dialogue in the Middle East to get people off the you know, the rails of war, basically. Like, it's always like, well, let's just keep doing war. And it's like, no, man, the wars never end up in the favor of moderate governments, right? You look at Iran, you look at Afghanistan, you look at Iraq, you look at Libya. Do you think any of those countries right now are in better shape than they were 50 years ago?
No.
You know, there's way more fundamentalists that we basically created. in the power vacuum that we left in the Middle East, the fundamentalists usually take power, and they're the ones that end up causing the most mayhem and problems.
Well, but
I
this
mean,
is why Trump got elected to an extent. He said we're interfering in the world's problems way too much.
Yeah, yeah, it's
That
not
is
our
something
job.
the Obama administration, took a more hardline stance of playing a role in the Middle East versus Trump.
Yeah, I don't think, not to mention, man, the one thing I honestly hate about the way that politics is, everyone is fighting for Gaza. Like, oh, Gaza this, Gaza that, blah, blah, blah. Is anyone talking about Congo? About how there's actually real genocide in most of continental Africa? Are there a single protest out there talking about that? Like, no. For some reason, this is the one thing that everyone wants to talk about. Nowhere else in the world, and there's other problems.
Yeah.
So
That's a fair
it's
point.
just, I don't know. I hate, this is the part that I hate about like politics, and that there's always agenda items that are in the ether that makes people go crazy. And sometimes I wonder if it's actually just the politicians playing us like puppets, saying, look, you don't have to worry about the economy, you need to worry about this phantom object about to, these people in a far off land attacking you or something like that.
Right. It's a fair point. It's a very fair point. Kris, you are going to be on the stock draft tonight, right? You're doing it with us?
Yeah. You got to send us the list, man. I got to.
Okay, so I got busy last night. I'm going to send you the list. So, guys, we're doing a stock draft tonight. Kris, me, Tanner, Steve, and Matt. 75 companies. We each get a pick of 10. You guys will be voting who has the best ETF. Essentially, it's a 10 stock ETF. And at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Wait, who can? Here's the question: we can overlap though, right?
No, so there's 70. So once I pick Palantir, no one else can pick Palantir.
Ah, gotcha. Okay.
So it's like it kind of gets off. It's like an NBA draft when you pick players and stuff.
Gotcha.
And we're gonna do the order live. I'm gonna do a random name generator. It's gonna pick the order. My only request for you, Kris, during this whole thing, like I really, really would appreciate as a friend, as a brother, for you to comply with this, is if you do get the first pick, can you promise me you won't take Palantir?
Oh, you don't have to worry about that, man. That's not even gonna be my last pick. Don't worry. Like if you were like, hey, I'll sell you my last draft pick, nah, you can have it, bro. You do not have to worry about me picking Palantir.
Because it's from these prices. So we're picking it from these prices today. That's the 1 year performance. So
yeah. So we're targeting a 1 year performance.
Targeting 10 companies. Think of it as an ETF. So Steve's gonna make an Excel sheet that just equally weights them. And then in a year, we have to see which one outperforms.
Okay, interesting. Is there like some kind of, we should make a bet, like all of us put in like a G each, and whoever the winner is gets the money.
Let's do it. Yeah, 1 to 5. Yeah, So it's a 5 Gs. Whoever has the best portfolio wins the 5. I like that.
Yeah,
that works. Not overlapping is more fun. Because if I take, like, I'm not going to take VG, but if I take VG and Kris can't take that and he's forced to pick something else, that's what makes it. If Kris picks VG, then it's like,
Yeah.
It's not.
Oh, that's why it's a good draft. That's actually a really good idea.
Yeah. And it's only going to be 75 because I don't want to do like 1,000 companies because then there's not enough, competition between picks. So,
yeah. Well, the thing is, like, once I know which companies are out there, I can start to actually tailor a list. So right now, without that list, so how are you picking these 75?
So I talked to the chat yesterday. I got about 30 companies that they said we should have on the list. And then I'm doing the max 7. I'll send the list in like an hour. You guys can tell me if you want to revise it. And if there's any picks I missed that you really want on the list, we'll put it there. But it should be pretty much all the companies that we all care about. So
okay. As long as there's some cruise lines in there, cool.
You're gonna really pick the cruise lines on this?
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
All right, Kris, thank you. Appreciate you, brother. I'll see you tonight.
All right. Later, dude. Have a good
Later.
one. Bye.
Have a good one. All right, guys, the Chime dude is saying why Chime is a good idea. Let's pull this up. If this thing really pumps more than SoFi, it is going to be wild. SoFi is above 15 right now. And if they actually get $42 a share, it's going to get close to that $20 billion valuation.
The company's customer base is faring in this economy right now.
The interesting thing about our model is 70% of the spend that our members do is on non-discretionary payments. So they're doing it, they're buying groceries, paying utility bills. We're not as subject to the ups and downs of a credit cycle because we're primarily a payments business, not a lending business. And so I think that's really unique about the model. And even in past corrections and COVID and so forth, we actually saw that more of your direct deposit goes into your
But you do
primary
have these
bank account.
overdraft. I mean, you have this overdraft product, right? People can take up to at least $200 and they don't have to pay fees.
That's right.
Is there a risk there, though?
There's always a risk when you're doing some amount of short-term credit extension, but think about, these credit lines that we're giving people, $200 of overdraft, or with our MyPay service, the ability to access your paycheck up to $500 at any point in time over the pay cycle. These credit extensions we do pay back to us in very short periods of time. Our Spot Me product pays back in less than 7 days. The MyPay product pays back in less than 2 weeks. So we really have our hands on the dial, and if we ever needed to course correct in some way, we have a high degree of flexibility. And it's not in any way a capital intensive business the way a bank is.
As I mentioned, you have been at it for some time. It doesn't appear that the big banks are particularly interested in your customer base, I guess. But is that a risk still, that at some point they'll say, you know what, we're gonna start to try to compete here in terms of fees?
Well, I think they've tried a few times and then pulled back. But I think I would direct you to Jamie Dimon's shareholder letter, which came out just 2 months ago. And there was a passage in there where Jamie wrote that for low balance accounts at Chase, which make up the majority of our accounts, the cost to service these accounts far exceed the profit that we earn from them. He said something along those lines. And I think, full respect for Jamie Dimon, I think Jamie's saying out loud what a lot of other bank CEOs probably think, which is that they're way more focused on serving the needs of higher income people that they can lend to. And that's why you continue to see, innovations in the area of private client, wealth services, jumbo mortgages, super prime credit cards with travel access and all these sorts of things. Whereas we're focused on the everyday consumer and the needs that matter most to them around liquidity, avoiding fees, and not trying to disparage the bankers. They're making practical decisions.
I'll tell you right now, I like how this guy talks. Already. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen to the stock. I don't care that much about the business, but I like how he's communicating. And I don't know. There's a vibe there that I could see him being able to get Wall Street to rally around this idea. $27 is the offering price, 32 million shares. Reuters says it might go to 43. If that's the case, it's going to be a big IPO.
Around focusing their product innovation efforts on the segment of the population that they can make the most money from. Because of their reliance on a branch infrastructure and the physical acquisition and service delivery model, the mathematics just don't work. It's not a profitable segment. For us, we can enjoy close to 70% transaction margins with this huge segment of America, 75% that make up to 100K,
right?
And help them make progress in their financial life.
And he's a founder. You got a founder, bro. At the end of the day, he's not just the suit they put in to take this company public. He is a founder of this business, and he's taking it public.
How many employees do you have?
1,400.
1,400.
Yeah, 1,450.
And you're going to be a public company soon. And I think it's 25.9 million shares are being sold by the company. So you're raising that money, another 6 million or so by existing stockholders. What are you going to do with that money? I mean, is it going to enable you to do what? Hire more people, more infrastructure?
Honestly, we didn't have any capital constraints. So we think that going public was just a natural step in our evolution as a leader in our category and as a consumer brand. We're really excited about becoming an even more well-known company. We will be raising some money. We'll be using a good portion of those proceeds to pay the taxes on the double trigger RSUs for so many of Chime employees that will have a tax due bill upon the transaction. So that's actually where the majority of the proceeds will go. And the rest will be, we think having about $1 billion of cash makes sense for a company.
So a lot of it is kind of a marketing exercise.
It's a little bit of a marketing exercise, yeah. But
maybe we'll be talking about it on CNBC. You're right here. I mean, it does help, I guess. But is there something else in terms of the audience or your potential addressable audience that they care whether you're a public company or not?
I think, as a company that is really a digital first company, anything you can do to have more connections to the physical world is goodness.
Right.
And our aspiration is to be a generational brand that sets a new standard in banking. And of course, we need to be a public company in order to do that. And it obviously opens up lots of opportunities in the area of M&A and growth and just general
Well,
corporate
you'll be able,
flexibility.
yes, of course, you'll be able to use a currency if
Yeah.
you choose to. Are
We've
there
had shareholders.
opportunities?
We've had shareholders for 12 years.
You have,
We've
I know.
We've got
And
employees.
you thought you might go public at a different time. I mean, you had a valuation far above at least what we're going to see at the open tomorrow, right? This company at some point in the private markets was valued at close to $25 billion.
Yeah, in our last financing back in 2021, obviously that was a different point in time. We've
Yes, it
grown
was.
substantially since then and have now reached profitability. So, the price of stock fluctuates. I think for us, nothing wavers in terms of our focus on obsessing over the needs of the everyday consumer and doing a better job of banking them into this payments-driven business model that we have, which is so different than the way traditional banks go to market.
And what about you? You've been at it for a while. I did note, and this is, compared to your customer base or most people, you're going to own 5% or so after the IPO, which is going to be a significant sum, but it's not that much compared to a lot of founders. How did you get to such a low number, and does it incent you enough to want to continue?
Oh, I'm very satisfied, and I have no regrets on the path that I've taken. I've got a co-founder, and we have been a private company for some period of time, and I have more than enough motivation. I don't even need financial motivation to continue. This is my life's mission.
And he has an interesting backstory.
All right, Chime, baby. When do they go public? Is it like soon? Dave's up 3% just because of Chime. SoFi should be getting a little bit of a bid. It's now down. Wow, yeah, 43, bro. It was up to 43. That's the bid and the ask on Robinhood. Holy crap, dude. 27 to 43. My goodness, bro. Look, my thing is freaking SoFi should get a bid from this. They should. Again, if it went from 27 to 43, if the spike was going to go from 27 to 43, that's already happened, if that's the price. Which means if you have to buy it at 43, does it go to 63, 65? I don't know. But it's as Tanner says right here, yeah, crazy IPO market. Trump is live. Okay, Trump is live. Let's go to Mr. Trump. He's signing some bills.
Inflation under control perfectly. You probably saw the records. Everyone's on television saying, what's going on here? Trump has proven to be right. All of these things. We've taken in $88 billion in tariffs in 2 months. $88 billion with no inflation. And if we're smart, there won't be. Now, we'd like to get this guy to lower interest rates because, if he doesn't, we have to pay. We have a lot of short-term debt. Obama gave it to us originally, and Biden carried it on. They like short-term. I like long-term cheap debt. But a lot of the debt comes through because Biden, he didn't do it. I'm sure he didn't know anything about it. But somebody approved short-term debt. It's all over the place. And it comes due starting very soon. And if we would lower the interest rates by 1 point, we'd pay about 1 point less. That's $300 billion a year. Can you believe it? 1 point. If he'd lower it by 2 points, we'd pay $600 billion a year less. That's for years, 10 years, 12 years, whatever we make it. But we can't get this guy to do it. And the fake news is saying, oh, if you fired him, it would be so bad. It would be so bad. I don't know why it would be so bad, but I'm not going to fire him. I just want him to, we call him Too Late, right? Too Late is his nick, like Too Tall Jones. He was too tall, TOO. And I just say this because we want to get rid of inflation, and we have. But we're going to be paying more for debt. And all he has to do is lower it. Europe's done 10 lowerings. We've done none. And nobody understands it. Actually, today when the numbers came out, they were so good. You saw yesterday's numbers, incredible. No inflation. Today's numbers. Today just came out, same thing, no inflation. They're all shocked. All these guys are watching from business, CNBC, and all of these different networks. Maria Bartiromo actually got it right. She's been getting it right for a long time, that one. I hope she's appreciated. And Joe Kiernan's been very good at CNBC, I must tell you, but other people aren't so good. But I will say that they can't believe what's happening. But if I could, because we can discuss, we get a lot of press, we get a lot of cameras rolling right now. Not that I like doing it, because I don't. But if we cut our interest by 1 point, for years, we save $300 billion. If we cut it by 2 points, we save, because it's pretty equivalent. We're going to spend $600 billion a year, $600 billion, because of one numbskull that sits here. I don't see enough reason to cut the rates now. And the problem he's got is that, and I explained to him, look, if inflation went up, cut your rates now. There's no inflation. We got it down. We got prices down. We got gasoline down. And you'll keep it going down. But gasoline's down. We drill, it's drill, baby, drill. That's why it's going down. But we're all that. But think of it. I said to him, he was in my office a couple of days ago. I said, if you think there's inflation, let's find out. Because I think we're going to keep it down. I think gasoline's going to be so far down. Oil, energy, it's so much energy. We have so much energy, we don't know what to do with it. But let's say there was inflation in a year from now. Raise your rates. I don't mind. Raise your rates. I'm all for it. I'll be the one I'll be calling you. He'll be too late for that too. But raise your rates. You don't have to keep them up here. If it's going to go up, I'm okay with you raising, but it's down. And we're going out to financing. And I may have to force something. Somebody said, who's the genius that thought of that? I said, it's me. Unlike Biden, I stay awake at night thinking about how to save our country. He was much better at sleeping than me. He could sleep on a beach. He could sleep on a beach with cameras rolling. I can't do that. But I had an idea. I gave it. They said, this is really, we'll go short term for a year. Let this guy get out of office. Somebody will come in, cut it a couple of points, and we'll save ourselves $7, $8, maybe even $900 billion a year. What is he doing? Why doesn't he lower these rates? And with that, we'll get on to the California standard, which is a disaster, okay? So Chris Wright, you're going to get the numbers down. Thank you very much. Lee Zeldin, one of the most important men in this room. He's the man. I get nervous when I talk to him. He's doing a great job. Nuclear, I say, okay, you can take 2 weeks for that approval. It used to take 20 years, then they wouldn't approve it. Now I say, Lee, nuclear, I'll give you 2 weeks for an approval. A coal-fired plant, you only get a couple of days. And oil and gas will give you a week, okay? Something like that. But he's doing it so fast, and we have so many plants being built right now. It's so beautiful to see. And one of the reasons they're coming here is because they have to produce tremendous, especially the AI, they have to produce beyond believable amounts of electricity. And they're doing, I said to them, I think this was more or less my idea. They didn't have the idea only because they didn't think a thing like this was possible. I said, as you build your plant, you're going to become a utility. And you're going to build a separate plant right alongside of it. You're going to build it. You're going to build a plant that produces electricity. And you'll produce it through natural gas, coal, nuclear. We don't want to produce it through wind because we don't feel like ruining 50 miles of beautiful plains and beautiful vistas. And but we want to produce it. Interestingly, China is opening up a coal plant every single week. But now I'm finding out it might be 2 plants every single week. And, usually that's a good gauge. If they're using coal, I guess we're supposed to use coal. And, we went to a coal standard. And not that you have to use coal. You're going to use whatever's best. I want to introduce also Senate Majority Whip John Barrasso, who's a tremendous guy, doctor. Okay. And he is a tremendous guy, tremendously talented doctor. When I have a medical situation for the country, for myself, I haven't used him, but I might have to. Maybe I'll do that. If it's serious enough, I think I'd probably do that. But he's a tremendously talented gentleman who happens to be a senator and one that's very respected. Chairwoman Shelley Moore Capito, and congratulations. I just endorsed your son. Did you know that? I endorsed your son. I endorsed your son, who's running in West Virginia, and he's great. In fact, he's all Trump all the time. I think much more so than you, actually. You were his largest impediment. No, I'm only kidding. He's all Trump all the time, and he's going to win big. And so congratulate him. Okay, he's really been fantastic. So many people have told me. Thank you. And House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, who's a brave man. He went through hell. Steve went through hell. And we have a lot of other people here that I won't be able to because they don't have your name down. And I'm looking and I see people's names. I'll do a couple of you, but thanks as well to Mark Wayne Mullen, Senator. Mark Wayne, thank you. Stand up, Mark Wayne. Don't fight him. He's a serious fighter in a lot of ways, and he's a great guy, too. Thank you, Mark Wayne. Deb Fisher. Deb? Thank you, Deb. Good. Pete Ricketts, who's going to do very well in the upcoming election. Thank you. Thank you, Pete. John Husted, who's really moving along in Ohio. John, good luck. You're going to do well. All endorsed people. John Curtis, who's doing terrifically. John, thank you. Good job. They all say excellent. What can I tell you? Good job. And Bernie Moreno, who won a race that was not winnable. They all said it's not winnable. He won in Ohio. They said you can't win that race. It's a waste of time. You're just wasting your time, right, Bernie? Wasn't a waste of time, was it? Huh? And he won by like 5 points, too. Won by a lot. Along with Representatives Kevin Kiley, Vince Fong, Jay Obernolte, Doug Lamaffa, Daryl Issa. Where's Daryl? I haven't seen you in such a long time. Look at you.
Okay, I think that's it. I don't think we're going to get too much more from that. The main stuff we got was what he said about inflation, which was the beginning of this bill signing, and the rest is going to be probably some other formalities that he's going through in terms of thanking all these people. So he said the fake news says if I fire Powell, it'd be so bad, I'm not going to fire him, but it wouldn't be bad at all. If we cut rates by 1 point, we save $300 billion. Inflation is under control. Powell is costing the country hundreds of billions in interest. I mean, he's right, dude. I don't think we're going to get one rate cut, but he is right that it's time to cut. And we would save a lot of money if we do cut. So there you go. All right, guys, that is it for me. I think it makes more sense for you guys to watch Jose on the AMD live stream because, to be honest, he's going to give you guys a lot better coverage of what AMD is actually announcing. I have a market close in a couple hours anyway, so kind of doesn't make sense for me to live stream AMD. I didn't know we would go this long, but it's starting in about 20 minutes. I'm going to link his page. Again, I think it'll just make a lot more sense because he can actually break down exactly what's going on with AMD. Again, this is his second largest position. So here's the link right there. I'm not anti-AMD, just saying I got to go get some stuff done. I have some other work. And then we have the market close in a couple hours anyway. so it's like if we stream AMD, it's just going to be, streaming the whole day at this point, which probably doesn't make that much sense right here. So that's the link to Jose. You can get it. We need a Space Mob type of name, bro. ASTS a Space Mob. We need a name when we raid a live stream. We need to like Mayo Gang. Do we do Mayo Gang? Is that what we do? We need to someone think of a good name. Someone think of a good name. It needs to roll off the tongue like Space Mob. So that when you enter into a chat, like if we raid Tanner's chat, everyone could just say that same word over and over again. We need to figure that out. But yeah, that is, so you guys can watch his stream and then I'll be back on the market close. We do have Bricked Gang. Okay, that's actually a good one. We do have Adobe earnings that we'll talk about after the bell. By the way, Tom Lee just quote tweeted me. Let's see what Tom Lee said. Tom Lee said, given the downward sustained disinflation in housing and auto insurance, one could make the case for more cuts in 2025. Well, Tom's been saying this for a while, that it's time to cut rates. So it makes sense. So there you go. I like Brick Gang. We don't have to say Bricked Gang, but I like Brick Gang. It doesn't roll off the tongue like Space Mob, though. Space Mob is one syllable, right? Space Mob. No, it's two syllables. Okay, that was stupid. It's two syllables, right? Wait, is it? Yeah, Space Mountain. That's 2 syllables. We need something that's 2 syllables. We need something that's 2 syllables. The draft's at 9 p.m. Eastern. Oh, yeah. We have a draft tonight, too. So that's another reason why, we can probably skip the AMD stream, at least for now. Dude, let's think of one. Brick Squad's not horrible. We got to think of one. And then we can just spam it in any chat that we go to as well. Maybe just brick emojis. Yeah, maybe just brick emojis. Brick Click, Brick Gang. Brick Click? That's not horrible. Brick Bays. Brick House. Wait, Brick House. Oh, that's a pretty. Yeah, that's a pretty popular song. Yeah, 1977. Yeah, I know this song. I've heard this song before. I at least know this song. All right, cool. That's it. So I'll be back for the market close and then stock draft tonight. I got to send these guys a list because they've been begging me for the past 24 hours to send them a list. So let me send them a list. And 9 p.m. tonight, we will do it. It should be fun. And I will see everyone there as well. Wait, word of the day. We got to do word of the day. Okay, what's word of the day? Word of the day is, I've heard this many times. This is a good one. You guys have heard this. Shindig. Shindig.
Shindig.
A large dance party or other celebration. Nothing says summer like a rooftop shindig with string lights and loud music. I heard they spent 10 grand on that shindig and still ran out of guacamole. There you go. Shindig. Hopefully tonight's stock draft is a nice shindig. And we got to see which one of you guys think we get the best companies. There's going to be a poll at the end as well. So obviously we'll track the 1-year performance, but there will be a poll at the end and we're going to see out of us 5 what people think is the best ETF that we came up with. So it'll be Steve, Matt, Tanner, Chris, and I, 9 p.m. Eastern. And we'll be doing the stock draft tonight. All right, cool. That's it. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you guys on the market close later today. Brick Gang. I like that one. I think we might roll with Brick Gang. We might roll with it. And again, AMD for Mr. Jose. Here's the link right here. You can check it out and you can watch the call. It's going to be starting live in about 15 minutes. All right, cool. That's it. And we'll cover the Chime IPO. I think it's IPOing in like 20 minutes, so we'll cover that in the market close as well. All right. Bye, everyone. Have a good one. See you guys in a few hours.